Ladies and gents, boys and girls, what is up? Thursday, September the 14th, 2023. Hope you're all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. We have got a jam-packed show for you here on this Thursday. I see GA, Brandon, Steven, Austin Miller, Gavin, Travi, Brennan M., Ethan Kelly, Alex Mitchum, and Ryan Miller. What's going on? Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel. The TDC Questions channel, to be sure your questions are answered there. Guys, again, we have got a lot to get into. Of course, in our third hour, we have our Q&A Power Hour upcoming for you all, where we'll take your questions, your comments, your calls at 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. If you can't call in that third hour, be sure, excuse me, to leave us a voicemail right now, and we will take all of your questions, your comments, and your calls in that third hour. In our second hour, we have my good friend Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate. He will join us as he does each and every single Thursday. We'll talk all things from week 2, of course, look ahead to week 3, talk SEC, Gamecocks, and everything in between. And, of course, guys, in this first hour, we have a ton of different topics, excuse me, guys, to hit on. Appreciate each and every single one of you guys. Want to also say thank you to the guys over at Inside the Gamecocks, JC, JB, and Phil for having me on the airwaves, as they always do on Thursdays at 11:30. Really great stuff, really great conversation as we went back and forth talking Gamecocks and Bulldogs. And again, guys, I just want to say yet again, thank you all so much for the continued love and support. Elvis Black says, this is the perfect shirt to wear this week. Yeah, in case you missed it. I felt like we needed this mentality today. We need this mentality going into this weekend. Drop your nuts. Let it all hang, right? Throw the kitchen sink at them, like I said yesterday. What do you have to lose? That's the attitude I think South Carolina's got to move with going into this weekend. But either way, guys, again, really excited to chat with you all. We got a ton to discuss. And again, appreciate you guys. Do not forget, by the way, the TSUS A1 Air Quality Consultants post-game call-in show, airing immediately following South Carolina's game against Georgia on Saturday afternoon. It'll probably be around 7 o'clock, I would say. But again, immediately following the game, we'll talk all things Gamecocks and Bulldogs, get your immediate reactions. And, of course, most importantly, we will take your calls. Also, guys, if you're tuned into the first time, hey, we do this every single day, noon to 3, right here on YouTube. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you get notifications of when we drop new video content and when we go live as well. We're also live on Facebook and Twitter, so you can check us out on those entities, those platforms as well. And also, guys, of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast at the Spurs Up Show on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Guys, that being said, like I mentioned, Q&A Power Hour upcoming in hour number 3. Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate upcoming in hour number 2. And guys, like I said, if you're in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel, the TDC Questions channel. Make sure your questions are answered there. I see we're already active. We're already active in the Discord. So again, you guys continue to flood it, and we will get to those questions later in the show. Guys, with that being said, of course, it is Thursday, and every Thursday we do our drive around the SEC, looking at all things the SEC slate in week 3, and a lot of big-time matchups upcoming this weekend. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. We start in Starkville, Mississippi, as Mississippi State takes on the LSU Tigers, the 14th ranked Bayou Bengals, a noon kickoff on ESPN to get the SEC season off and running. And guys, this is a really exciting matchup. You know, I called this upset over the summer. I had Mississippi State taking down LSU. Now, admittedly, I thought this would be more of a trap game for the LSU Tigers because I had LSU winning their season opener against Florida State. You know, what's fascinating about Mississippi State in this one, you know, you go from the air raid to what they're doing now offensively, guys. Mississippi State ranks outside of the top 100 in passing attempts through 2 games. That is a mind-boggling stat when you think about the fact that State had led all of college football in passing attempts with the air raid and the late great Pirate over the past 3 years. LSU coming in this one, guys, I think it's a desperate bunch. They are walking a tightrope, of course, in this football game. They cannot afford another slip-up if they are going to have an opportunity to make the college football playoff later in this season. Starkville, guys, a weird place to play. We've already locked in Mississippi State plus 10. And again, you guys will know my prediction on tomorrow's show every single Friday. Of course, we lock in all of these SEC picks and all these SEC predictions. That being said, though, I'm expecting a really fun game. I'm excited for this one. Mississippi State with Will Rogers. You know, LSU, obviously, their secondary is the deficiency. Do they air it out more? Do we see Will Rogers go down the field? Do we see Kevin Barbe try to expose the deficiency that is the LSU secondary? And on the LSU side, they are the more talented team in this football game. There is no question. But you look at this series, and it has been a really, really weird series over the years, right? The results show that on the field, and I know that LSU's won 6 the last 9, but a lot of those have been really, really close. You can always count on this game. This LSU-Mississippi State game, to tie this back to the Gamecock side of things, this series kind of reminds me of what South Carolina, Georgia was back in the 2000s, where it feels like it's always kind of a slugfest, defensively dominated, hard-nosed, hard-hitting type of ball game. I would expect more of the same in this one. Like I mentioned, guys, LSU, a 10-point favorite on the road. And I'm curious to what Mississippi State dials up in this. And also, I think it helps State that they just saw Arizona and their offensive attack last week. I know LSU is much better, but it's a very similar style to what Arizona and their starting quarterback wanted to do and what they did as to what Jaden Daniels and that LSU offense will do in this ball game. So I think it's a game LSU has to win. All the pressure is on LSU to win, but don't be surprised if some weird things don't happen in Stark Vegas on Saturday. We move to Como, Mizzou, taking on the 15th ranked Kansas State Wildcats on the SEC network. You know, Kansas State, a high-quality team. They've looked kind of ho-hum okay their first 2 outings. Just beat a pretty solid Troy team last week. My attention, though, guys, in this one is on Missouri. Hey, Missouri, what are you really? And I have a really, really hard time, number one, figuring out Mizzou under Eli Drinkwitz. Because just when you think Mizzou is going to take a step forward, they're going to break out, they're going to emerge as maybe the second or even the third best team in the SEC East, they fall flat on their face. And there's not a more disgruntled fan base of a 2-0 team right now than that of the Missouri Tigers. And it makes sense, right? When you beat Middle Tennessee State by a score of 23-19, your offense has been stagnant. Is Brady Cook the answer? Is he not? Will Brady Cook on Saturday? Missouri's defense is going to give them a chance in every single football game, guys. It's up to Eli Drinkwitz to solve the offensive side of things. If he can do that, Mizzou might win 8 or 9 games this year. If he can't, it's going to be the typical song and dance of 6-6. And if Mizzou, I said about Texas A&M last week, right? I think for A&M to pop off and have the big season we're all expecting, they've got to beat Miami, and they didn't. I look at Mizzou, this is a very similar type of game as that Miami game was for Texas A&M. In my mind, if Mizzou, let's say, is going to get to 8-4, if they're going to pop off and get to 9-3, let's say even, they got to have this one. Because, guys, you look at how the schedule sets up. You look at how the schedule sets up for Mizzou. I believe they got another non-conference game next week. Then they have Vandy. Then they have LSU in a couple weeks. Like, they could realistically be 5-0 going into hosting the LSU Tigers in Columbia, Missouri, which has been a weird place for LSU to go to, and some strange things have happened. So this is a huge game. This is a tipping point. Kansas State, a 4 or 4.5 point favorite, but it's really, really hard to trust Mizzou in a spot like this based off just what they've done in the past. We'll see if they can start to earn some goodwill from folks starting this Saturday. Of course, guys, we're breaking down South Carolina and Georgia all week long. We move to Alabama with probably the weirdest road game that you will ever see. Bama travels to South Florida. Yes, you heard that correctly. Bama's going on the road to take on South Florida, a 3:30 kickoff on ABC. And poor South Florida. I mean, they really drew the short straw in this one after Bama's loss to Texas. Alabama, of course, going to be wanting to take out their frustration on somebody else. But for Alabama, man, it's about getting to what Alabama football is all about, which is winning in the trenches, winning with the big uglies, right? Winning up front. Everybody wants to blame Jalen Milroe. And I don't necessarily think Milroe is the guy, but they have so many other problems than Jalen Milroe, right? If everything else was clicking, if the offensive line, the defensive line, if those things were clicking, then I don't think we're talking as much about Jalen Milroe. I mean, Bama's won before, and they've won national titles. They've won at a high level without above average quarterback play. They've done it a lot, actually. So we're putting all this pressure on Jalen Milroe, but he can't make up for every single deficiency on the football field. I think Alabama's going to be fine, guys. I just, I say the same thing I said about LSU. I'll say it about Bama. Texas is a really, really good team. Let's tip the cap to Texas, right? Let's not just say that, Alabama, that their season's over. They're no good. And, we'll see. I had Bama going 9-3. I still think it could happen, but I don't think all of a sudden Alabama is just going to go 6-6. They lost all their talent. Like, I think you're going to see them bounce back in a big way. I think they'll be much sharper. I think that they'll play at a much higher level. And I think they're going to take out a lot of frustration on South Florida in this football game. But a really, really, what is the mood too of Alabama? That's a big question for me. What's the mood of Alabama in this football game, right? Because it'd be very easy for a team to hang their heads and say, you know what, woe is me. We lost the biggest game of the year. Who cares about playing South Florida? Like, this is dumb. To get down and out and dejected and not put their best foot forward. I think that's probably the greatest challenge for Nick Saban going in this football game. Texas A&M, speaking of a team that needs to bounce back, A&M taking on UL Monroe, 4:00 kick on SEC Network. Defensively, we just need to see A&M make strides defensively. I mean, that's it, guys. The offense, which is crazy, we thought that was going to be the problem. I think Connor Wegman and company, Evan Stewart, Anaya Smith on the outside, I think they're going to be fine. I think, again, guys, you see the Bobby Petrino effect and the way it's clicking. They've got to get back to being dominant defensively, right? This is going to be a game where Texas A&M will come in licking their wounds, and certainly the Aggies will have the advantage. I think they're a 30-plus point favorite in this football game, but getting back to dominating defensively and ironing those things out, because A&M, same thing. Their season's not over. They haven't lost an SEC game yet, but they got to bounce back in a big, big way from that Miami loss, and maybe Miami will turn out to be just that good, but you better hope that's the case, because if not, things get ugly down the road for Jimbo and Bobby Petrino and the rest of that crew. So bouncing back defensively, a convincing win, but unfortunately for A&M fans, I don't know if there's enough that Texas A&M could do to, cure the wounds or get rid of the scars, if you will, of that loss to Miami. Guys, we move to arguably the game of the weekend as the Tennessee Volunteers travel to the Swamp to take on the Florida Gators, 7:00 kick on ESPN. And guys, I cannot wait to watch this football game. All of the chatter going into this ball game has been about Tennessee's struggles in the Swamp. They've won there twice the last 51 years. They haven't won there since 2003. The fact of the matter is this, guys. While those stats, what they serve as, guys, they're really, really fun for you and I and others to talk about going into this game. When toe meets leather on Saturday night, that stat means nothing. It means nothing for those coaches, for those players, and for what's going to unfold on Saturday night. With that being said, the Swamp will be a raucous environment. I think you're going to see a desperate Florida team, because this is a game for Florida. I'm still curious about Florida in the sense that, we have all proclaimed Florida to be dead in the water. They're going to be terrible. I've got people that want to rank them 14th below Vandy in the SEC power rankings. Heck, if we could rank them 15th, I think some folks think they deserve to be there. But all we've seen of Florida is this, guys. We've seen Florida go on the road to Utah and lose to a Utah Utes team that I think probably half of the SEC would have also lost to. Maybe it would have been a different fashion. Maybe the offense would have been more productive, but over half of the SEC teams would have lost to Utah. Then we saw the Gators bounce back and beat McNeese. So we don't really know a lot about the Florida team at this point. We don't really know what Florida is. We assume they're not going to be very good. And we assume that, if Tennessee executes and Joe Milton plays at a high level and that defense continues what they've done to this point, that, Tennessee will have no problem covering the 6.5 and breaking the hex that is their troubles in the swamp, if you will. But this game serves for Billy Napier in Florida as a really turn the tide, flip the script type of ball game. If Florida is going to get to that 7-5 mark, that 8-4 mark, if they're going to surprise people in the SEC, it could start in a big, big way on Saturday night. Do not be surprised if weird things don't happen in this football game. You get Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne, that run game going. We liked what we saw from Florida's defense in the first game. Could they give Joe Milton some problems? And this is the game we're going to find out about Joe Milton, guys. When you go on record like Joe Milton did and said, hey, I don't lose in the state of Florida. I don't lose in Florida, right? Okay. You better live up to that promise because Tennessee fans will let you hear it if you don't. This is a massive, massive ball game. And for the first time in a while, guys, it feels like Tennessee, Florida, it's got that juice again. You know what I mean? It's got that flavor again. And I cannot wait to see how this plays out because on paper, I'm sitting here telling myself, okay, Tennessee should roll. But a night game in the swamp against a desperate bunch of Gators, you never know. So it's going to be fascinating. I think we're going to learn a lot about both of these sides on Saturday night. Auburn taking on Samford, 7 o'clock SEC Network Plus. Auburn looking to build off that big win over Cal. They sit 2-0. It's really about just getting the offense going. Getting Peyton Thorne some confidence, getting him rolling, if you will. I mean, they need a big offensive showing in this football game. If not, there could be a quarterback controversy on the Plains with Robbie Ashford and what he may be able to do in the offense. So, for Auburn again, it's all about the offense, making it click, smoothing some things out. It was abysmal up at Cal. Good news is, though, they won the football game, but you got to use this non-conference opportunity against Samford, to get this thing rolling and figure out some things offensively. We move to Vanderbilt taking on UNLV. This is a 7 o'clock kick on CBS Sports Network. This game is in UNLV. So Vandy going on the road in this one, guys. We've already locked it in. Vandy -4. For Vanderbilt, guys, if they're going to get to that 4-win total over 3.5, they got to win this football game. They got to take care of UNLV. Going to need a big game from A.J. Swan. I love his weapons on the outside with Shepard, McGowan. Does the offensive line hold up? Can the secondary hold up? I think Clark Lee needs this one, man, because, we spent all offseason talking about, how great of a story Vandy was and how can you not love Clark Lee and how can you not love the job he's doing in Nashville. But I think to continue that positive momentum and to keep this thing moving forward the way that it needs to go, you need to win this football game. This would be an abysmal loss, right? Losing to Wake Forest, there's no shame in it, right? It was disappointing, but there's no shame in it. But you can't let Wake Forest beat you twice. And you cannot let that thing snowball. And if you lose to UNLV, all of a sudden, Vandy's back to being the Vandy that we all know. So Vandy get UNLV, a game under the radar this weekend, but a big one for the Commodores. We move to Oxford, Mississippi. The 17th ranked Ole Miss Rebels hosting the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets on SEC Network. And guys, normally this would not be all that big of a game, right? What do you really gain out of Ole Miss beating Georgia Tech? But for the sake of the SEC, guys, after the way the SEC has started out this season, this conference desperately needs this win over Georgia Tech. And you see the fits that the ACC is giving the SEC. North Carolina beating South Carolina. Florida State beating LSU. Miami beating Texas A&M. All of a sudden, guys, if Ole Miss has some off night and Georgia Tech gets the dub, man, the SEC is still the best conference. Don't get me wrong, but it's just going to be ugly. I mean, it's just going to be ugly, bottom line. So Ole Miss with Jackson Dart, they got to get things going up front of the offensive line. Quinshad Judkins struggling to run the football, and I'm worried about that offensive push. If you're not able to run the football against Tulane, how are you going to do it in the SEC? But, this is a game that Ole Miss, we expect them to win. They should win, but do not have an off night, because the last thing the SEC can afford is another ugly showing against an ACC opponent. And I think Georgia Tech's actually a little bit better than people want to give them credit for going into this football game, but a big one in Oxford, a big one at Vaught Hemingway. And this is one that, Ole Miss, all of a sudden, guys, they got Alabama looming, right, next weekend. Take on the Crimson Tide. You cannot get caught looking ahead in this football game. Arkansas, another big one, taking on BYU, a 7:30 kickoff on ESPN2. Here's a fun fact for you guys, something I didn't realize till this morning. You guys might remember Slovis, the quarterback from Pittsburgh. He is now BYU's starting quarterback. So it's a period of transition for BYU, but that's a big-time name for them, right? BYU going to come in. This is Arkansas's first real test. They do not have Rocket Sanders in this football game. KJ Jefferson is playing as well as any quarterback in the country. This is a big one for Arkansas, man. This is a really, really big one for Arkansas. Big one for Sam Pittman, right? Because, Arkansas is 2-0, but they've sort of sleptwalked their way through it. I mean, they've played nobody, right? Kent State, and then I think Western Carolina it was in week 1. So first real test for the Hogs. How do they fare without Rocket Sanders? Does somebody else step up in that running game? Can KJ Jefferson totally shoulder the load? How does the Dan Enos offense, right? How does it fare in a game against a team with a pulse? Really excited to watch this football game, guys. We're going to learn a lot about Arkansas, and it's all on KJ Jefferson, right? Putting the pressure on him. And this is a game Sam Pittman needs, man. I mean, again, going into year 4 of the Pittman era, they need to see. I think Pittman probably needs to win 8 games or more to keep that fan base happy. You get to 7, it's nice. You get to less than 7, and all of a sudden, who knows, right? So to get to that 7 or more win mark, I think Arkansas needs to take down BYU. Going to be a fun one in Hog Country for sure. And finally, the Kentucky Wildcats taking on Akron, the Zips, on ESPNU, a 7:30 kickoff in Lexington. Dude, for Kentucky, it's just about looking the part, right? It's about looking the part. I get the whole thing with, they're not good against lesser competition, the spread against FCS teams. But, if you're Kentucky and you're going to challenge, and, it's again, God bless the person who made Kentucky's schedule. Because Kentucky, after Akron, they get Vandy next weekend. Then they get Florida the following weekend. There's a chance, guys, Kentucky's 5-0, and they've beaten nobody that's really all that good. I mean, it's absolutely crazy how their schedule plays out. Again, for Kentucky, it's about Devin Leary building off of what he found in that game last weekend against Eastern Kentucky. Started slow, but ended up having 4 touchdown passes. Physicality up front, Ray Davis in the running game, physicality on the defensive side as well, and just looking the part. If there's a theme for this game for Kentucky, it's look the part. So many folks picked you to be the second best team in the SEC East or third best team or be an 8 or 9 win team. It's time now in week 3 to look the part. It's time to look like the Kentucky team that caught all this hype and added all these players in the portal and live up to those preseason expectations and preseason hype. So, guys, a packed week 3 slate in the SEC. And as conference play begins, we begin to learn more and more about these teams and how this season will unfold as we navigate into conference play. Guys, that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our first break of the day. On the other side, we'll dive into our top storylines for this weekend's game between the hedges. The Gamecocks take on the Georgia Bulldogs. All that and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge, where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Macho Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, September the 14th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. I see the comments, the questions flooding in. Be sure to do so, guys. Like I mentioned, we'll take all of your questions, comments, and calls in our Power Hour, hour number 3. And, of course, in hour number 2, we have my good friend Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate. He is joining the show Really excited to get Marc Ryan's thoughts on everything from, the week 2 performances to week 3 game in Athens and the Gamecocks and Bulldogs and everything in between as well. So looking forward to that, guys. Looking forward to that discussion. In the meantime, guys, we continue to break down and look ahead of this weekend's games from the Gamecocks and the Dogs in Athens. South Carolina looking to do the unthinkable to pull the massive upset as a 27.5-point underdog between the hedges. And we look ahead to Saturday, my top storylines for this weekend's game, the SEC opener for both South Carolina and Georgia. And this has been something we've discussed all week long, but it's worth noting yet again, the final year of the quote-unquote border war for the foreseeable future, guys. Gamecocks and Bulldogs will not meet, as you know, in 2024 due to the SEC expansion and the updated scheduling, what have you. It feels like, I know that divisions are going away with East and West, but South Carolina's schedule next year feels very SEC West heavy with Texas A&M and Alabama and, LSU and Oklahoma, what have you. And so I think it puts a little bit of extra emphasis and a little bit of extra motivation in this football game, right? And it's a weird thing, right? We talked, my favorite memories from this series, and that was on purpose because, next year was the first time since 1991 that South Carolina and Georgia have not met on the gridiron. And while this series has taken a turn over the last 8 or 9 years or so, Georgia dominating for the most part, there's a lot of great memories in this series. It's one that we're also used to seeing, and it's going to be strange, not having it on the slate next year. So I think that, for South Carolina, putting their best foot forward, putting on a good showing and challenging Georgia, if not beating them. And for Georgia, obviously the same thing. They want to put their best foot forward and have a good showing in the final matchup of these two as well for the foreseeable future. Kind of a different vibe and sort of a weird feeling going into this football game, knowing we don't get Gamecocks and Bulldogs in 2024. Guys, there's a lot of familiarity, too, when it comes to this game between South Carolina and Georgia. And it's, speaking of the weird vibes, when you look at, I was doing my deep dive on Georgia's roster and their players, and, I was skimming over the coaches. It is crazy when you look at the coaching staff and you see names like Mike Bobo, Will Muschamp, even Brian McClendon, who I almost forgot was on that staff. Then you think about the dynamic of Kirby Smart and Shane Beamer, and obviously Beamer worked for Kirby Smart for a couple of years. These are two programs. These are two teams. These are two coaching staffs more than anything that are very, very, very familiar with each other. And you just, not that you need extra motivation, not that you need, that bit of extra, right, in this football game, because it's South Carolina and Georgia. If that doesn't get you fired up, if that doesn't get your blood pumping, you need to get your pulse checked. But, we all know. We all know how the Gamecock fan base feels about Mike Bobo, Will Muschamp, that entire crew. And so getting revenge would be nothing short of sweet, right? And let's not forget that Shane Beamer's 1-0 against Mike Bobo in his time facing him off, because Mike Bobo was the OC at Auburn back in 2021 when the Gamecocks took down the Auburn Tigers. Brian Harsin-led Tigers, of course. So it's going to be interesting, facing off against Mike Bobo, against Will Muschamp, Brian McClendon, that entire crew. And then, of course, the Shane Beamer and Kirby Smart dynamic. And, I was asked this late last night, guys, is there any bad blood? Is there beef between Kirby Smart and Shane Beamer? I mean, the way that the sideline antics and Kirby Smart last year looking over at the Gamecock sideline saying, "First down, mother effer," like that doesn't seem like antics of a guy who has a lot of love and admiration for his counterpart on the other side of the field. So it's going to be interesting. The emotions in this football game will be running high outside of it being the SEC opener, outside of South Carolina, Georgia, and what that brings. But these coaching staffs, all of their familiarity, I think that's going to make for a really interesting dynamic on Saturday afternoon. Now, getting onto the field where it really matters, right? The big question is this: do slow starts play a big role on Saturday? Because you look at Georgia over the first 2 weeks, and I know for many of you out there giving your keys to the game and what South Carolina has to do, taking advantage of a Georgia team that has come out of the gate really, really sluggish in each of their first two games against UT Martin and Ball State, and putting the pressure on them from the jump. That is something many folks have reference to, and I do agree that that's South Carolina, something they need to accomplish. Do slow starts continue to hurt Georgia, right? I mean, to be fair, they scored 31 points in the second quarter against Ball State last week, but they've come out of the gate looking very sluggish and starting very slow and just not looking like the Georgia that we are all so used to seeing. On the South Carolina side, how important is it to start fast, you may ask? Guys, the Gamecocks are 2-6 in road SEC games under Shane Beamer. They've been outscored 157-42 by halftime in those 6 losses. In the 2 wins, the Gamecocks have outscored their opponents 24-7. The translation is this, guys. On the road in the SEC, we typically know by halftime whether the Gamecocks have a shot. So I would make sense of it this way. You can't win the game in the first half, but you sure as hell can lose it. And South Carolina has found ways on the road in the SEC under Shane Beamer. When they've lost, they haven't just lost. They've lost in grand fashion. Many of those contests, it's been over at halftime. So, on the Georgia side of things, starting slow, when you do it once, okay, it's a one-off. You do it twice, all of a sudden, it becomes a trend. If South Carolina is able to start fast, jump on the Dogs, take advantage of that early, I think it's a situation where South Carolina can put the Dogs in a very uncomfortable situation and flip this game on its head, if you will. Guys, has there been a better quarterback in the SEC to this point than Spencer Rattler? And I think one of the biggest gripes from Gamecock Nation is that he's not quite getting the love and the respect nationally that he deserves. I mean, we've all seen these lists come out. Here's the top performing quarterbacks through 2 weeks. And for whatever reason, Spencer Rattler is just not getting any credit for what he's done at this point. Now, I understand that his numbers have come against North Carolina and Furman, 2 secondaries that aren't all that great. But the fact of the matter is this, guys. He has completed 83% of his passes to this point. I don't care who the opponent is. That's insane, right? Especially when you factor in the Gamecocks' biggest deficiency is their offensive line and not being able to run the football and really give him any help. He's also thrown for 359 yards per game, right? I mean, Spencer Rattler is playing at a level we have not seen at South Carolina at this point outside of the final stretch to end last season against Tennessee and Clemson. You want respect? You want South Carolina's QB1 to get national respect? Here's the opportunity. And what a statement it would be for him if he's able to go into Athens. You know what, guys? Even if it's in a losing effort, doesn't matter what effort it's in, even if it's in an effort in which the Gamecocks fall short, if Spencer Rattler goes out there, he puts up another 300 spot and throws for a couple of touchdowns and, takes care of the football, doesn't turn it over, we'll say, I think all of a sudden you are seeing the national narrative change when it comes to Spencer Rattler. Now, he's going to have to overcome more than likely an offensive line that's going to struggle against a really stout Georgia defensive front. And this is going to be his greatest task yet, his greatest challenge facing off against that Georgia secondary. Right? It's going to be his greatest challenge he's faced to this point. If Spencer Rattler is able to go toe-to-toe against that Georgia defense and put up the type of numbers or somewhat similar that we've seen in the first 2 weeks, you're going to see that narrative about Rattler completely change. And again, he might even have to be better than he's been the first 2 weeks, guys. And I don't know how possible that really is, but with Georgia's secondary, the pass rush that will inevitably be coming, I mean, they're solid at all 3 levels, guys. Georgia folks are claiming this defense is better than the defense they fielded last year, and we saw what Georgia's defense did to Spencer Rattler last season. But what an opportunity for the Gamecocks signal caller. What an opportunity for Spencer Rattler to make a statement in Athens that he absolutely 100% should be considered with some of the best quarterbacks in college football. Now, the man that'll be calling those shots and trying to scheme things for him to get Spencer Rattler in situations where he can be successful is South Carolina OC Dowell Loggins. And guys, one of my greatest question marks going in this football game. How is Dowell Loggins able to scheme around the offensive line deficiencies? Because let's call it what it is, guys. South Carolina is going to have to overcome the weakness up front to have a chance in this football game. I've seen a lot of people predicting 24, 28-point outputs for South Carolina this week. My question is, how? How is that going to happen when we know for a fact at this point, we know for a fact the offensive line is a weakness and South Carolina can't run the football? They ran it for 2.8 yards per carry against Furman and -2 yards when you include sacks against North Carolina. Georgia's defensive front is better than anything the Gamecocks have seen to this point by a wide margin. Do we see Dowell Loggins resort to the swing pass, the bubble screen? Do we see them go downfield a ton? Do we see them get creative in the running game? Because you're going to have to find some semblance of balance. Seen a lot of commentary this week. Why doesn't South Carolina just go to the air raid? They should throw it 90% of the time. Okay. See how that works out against Georgia's defense. See how that works out against SEC defenses. Guys, South Carolina has no chance in this football game and any SEC football game they play if they can't find a semblance of balance. How does that balance come against a really, really tough Georgia defense? I don't know. I don't know. What can they do in the running game? Dowell Loggins is going to earn his paycheck this week, folks. That's a fact. Dowell Loggins is going to earn every penny. But you got to find ways to get Georgia's defense on their heels. You got to find ways to win first down and get yourself in second and manageable, third and manageable, where you can take some shots, where you can utilize Xavier Legette, where you can utilize the tight ends, because you feel like you have the weapons. And with the way Spencer Rattler's playing, it gives you a chance in this football game. But I am so fascinated to see, because I think just saying, well, we got to be stingy in the run game and we got to be committed to it, I just don't think that's a recipe for success, guys. I don't think you can go in. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again. I'm not saying South Carolina should never attempt to run in this game, but you're a damn fool, and you're fooling yourself if you think the Gamecocks are all of a sudden going to find their running game up the gut against Georgia. It's wishful thinking. So, what does Dowell Loggins do from a schematic standpoint? I think he's been pretty solid through the first two games, right? We couldn't really tell in week one because of the offensive line and not being able to get Spencer Rattler time. And then week two, I mean, we liked what we saw, but we're really going to start to learn about Dowell Loggins, this offensive scheme, this offensive system, what South Carolina, number one, wants to do and what they can do with that deficiency that is the offensive line. Guys, speaking of the offense, what playmakers, we've talked a lot about Xavier Legette, and I've mentioned this many, many times, and I will go on record and say it yet again. And in case you missed it, guys, this quote came out from Dowell Loggins in the coordinator press conferences that took place yesterday. Dowell Loggins had this to say about Gamecocks wide receiver Juice Wells. Quote, "It's been a process. He's overcoming an injury that most people, 99% of the world, wouldn't be back from. He's done a great job. He's ready to get out there, and he's hungry." So, we have been led to believe for 2 straight weeks that Juice Wells was getting closer, and he's going to play, he's active, he's dressing out, he's good to go. And Juice Wells has been non-existent. He's been a non-factor. But guys, I cannot sit here and tell you with 110% certainty, is Juice Wells going to suit up or not? Is he going to go through warm-ups? Is he going to trot out on the field and play a couple of snaps? I have no idea. But I can tell you this. I've been made like a fool 2 weeks in a row for believing Juice Wells was going to play and make an impact. You will not fool me again. So until I hear Shane Beamer go on record, and he may do this, he may say it at Carolina Calls, he may say it at some point before the game, but until I hear Shane Beamer say that Juice Wells is 110% good to go, he's been cleared by everyone, and he will make an impact, or I see Juice Wells do it, I'm assuming it's not happening because we have been, again, led astray 2 weeks in a row. I won't let it happen a third time. So South Carolina is going to have to find a way to operate without Juice Wells and Xavier Legette as their number one target. You know as well as I do, Georgia's going to take him away, or they're going to do everything they can to take him away and make Spencer Rattler go elsewhere. Who are those players? Who are the other playmakers that emerge outside of Xavier Legette? Let's go back to the running back room. How is that handled, right? How is that managed? Do we see DeCarrion Joyner back at RB1? How did they utilize a Juju McDowell? Do we see more Mario Anderson after some encouraging things against Furman? Do we see Dontavius Braswell in this football game? How is the running game and the running back room managed? You then go to tight end. Is this the week the tight ends pop? Trey Knox, Joshua Simon. I know you're going to be in a lot of 12 personnel. I know you're going to be asking the block a lot and give Spencer Rattler time, but utilizing them down the field in some different type of formats, formation schemes, what have you, and getting the football in space, I think that could be an area you could find success in because Trey Knox, Joshua Simon, we all agree, they are guys that can be playmakers for you, can be big play threats. You then look on the outside at wide receiver. Guys, I'm not rehashing and going back to the whole argument of comparing Georgia's wide receivers and South Carolina's wide receivers, but let me say this to the credit of South Carolina's wide receivers. There are athletes in that room. There are guys that have potential in that room. Now, we don't know the status right now of Amarian Brown. From the latest I've heard, it's 50-50. So the Gamecocks may not be able to rely on him. But you have a guy like Eddie Lewis who had 6 catches against Furman. You've got a guy like a Luke Doty. As funny as it is, some people think it's a running joke, but you know what? Luke Doty doesn't know he's not supposed to make a big impact at wide receiver. So you've got him, a guy that's all he's done is make plays through 2 weeks. You've got a Nicholas Harbors, a true freshman. How much does he play? Does he play? I think it'd be a mistake not to play him, but we'll see. You got Omega Blake, who was raved about in the offseason, and the list goes on and on. So I think there's enough there in that room to where you can make some things happen. You can go down the field, but somebody's got to step up because Georgia's going to have an answer for Xavier Legette, I can assure you. That doesn't mean that Xavier Legette's not going to make plays, guys, but Georgia's not going to. Georgia's defense is too good to let 1 or 2 guys beat them. You're going to have people step up outside of Spencer Rattler and Xavier Legette. And I don't know if it's Trey Knox. I don't know if it's Joshua Simon. I don't know if it's Eddie Lewis. I don't know if it's Mario Anderson. I don't know if it's Nicholas Harbor. I don't know who it is, but somebody has to step up because Georgia's defense ain't going to get beat by 1 or 2 guys. They're just not. Who are those 1 or 2 guys going to be? We shall see on Saturday. Moving to the defensive side of things, guys. Is this a bit of a Tonka Hemingway revenge game? After the week that's been, poor Tonka Hemingway just getting dragged by the Georgia fan base, and I'm sure Georgia fans are going to be chirping at Tonka and letting him hear it after he didn't do anything. I know we would love nothing more than to see Tonka Hemingway pop off and have a big, big game on Saturday against Georgia. And that defensive front as a whole, he needs to lead the way for that defensive front because Georgia, they have not run the football up to their standard over the last couple of weeks, but you can bet your rear end they're going to be looking to establish the run, especially with Carson Beck, first SEC game. They're going to want to ease him into this football game. How much more motivated? Not that he needs more motivation, but it's just a fascinating thing to watch because Kirby's comments and then Tonka Hemingway. How does Tonka respond in this football game? And how does South Carolina's defensive front respond as well? Because Georgia, they're going to want to play smash mouth football, run the football, pound the football down your throat. Our guys like Tonka Hemingway, Boogie Huntley, Sanders, Barrett, Elijah Davis, those guys up front in the middle, are they ready to step up and slow down this rushing attack that is what Georgia will present on Saturday afternoon? Speaking of guys that can help And, I think the injury bug, certainly it's something, it's a storyline on both sides, right? Ladd McConkey for Georgia, the great wide receiver, Javon Bullard, their big-time safety, South Carolina as well. I already mentioned Juice Wells and the great mystery that is Juice Wells and his health. Then you have Jatius Gear, the edge, David Spalding at nickel, Nick Eamon-Warry at the safety position. What's the status of those guys? I think we're hearing good things, favorable things on Jatius Gear and Nick Eamon-Warry. Thankfully, it sounds like those guys should be able to go from what we're hearing. So what's their status, guys? I've mentioned for 2 straight weeks. I think getting Jatius Gear back will be huge. I think him not playing has been really, really detrimental to this football team because I just don't think South Carolina has a lot of high-quality SEC bodies at the edge spot outside of Jordan Strachan and Jatius Gear. So getting him back will be huge. If David Spalding doesn't go, asking Keenan Nelson Jr. to do more and to be a bigger impact player, right? Georgia's got a fantastic group of wide receivers, whether Gamecock Nation wants to believe it or not. I think having David Spalding back would be huge. And then Nick Eamon-Warry, guys, again, it goes without saying, you need him to blanket Brock Bowers. I mean, stopping Brock Bowers, it's going to be difficult enough. But if you don't have Nick Eamon-Warry, all of a sudden that task gets even more difficult. And we all saw what Brock Bowers did to South Carolina last season. Guys, you look at Carson Beck, first SEC game for him. And, we talk about the Gamecocks on the defensive side. And I told you guys a couple of days ago, like I am, unfortunately, I don't know if it's us talking ourselves into it or like the defense was so bad back in 2020 that Clayton Whitey couldn't help but overachieve and do great things. And the secondaries had some flashy players, some nice players. But the conference-wide narrative and the national narrative is that this defense stinks. And you look at the numbers, and guys, unfortunately, it doesn't help the Gamecocks case a whole lot, right? So this is a big weekend for Clayton White. This is a big weekend for the Gamecocks defense to maybe dispel that narrative a little bit, because I've been someone that I've always felt like, okay, the defense, they're not elite, but they're solid. I'm starting to grow more and more concerned with South Carolina's defense. Like I think that they're a little bit overvalued by a lot of Gamecock Nation. A lot of Gamecock fans give way too much credit to Clayton White in this defense. And so this is a big game for, again, dispelling that narrative. Is South Carolina, when you look at what they have to do defensively to have success in this one, are the Gamecocks able to slow down the run and force Carson Beck to beat them? Guys, that's your only chance of success. Getting Georgia in some 3rd and longs, getting Carson Beck in some 3rd and uncomfortables, putting him in some situations where the game is on his arm. The game is on Carson Beck's right shoulder. And you're generating some sort of pass rush. You're dialing up some exotic blitzes. Like, I don't think Clayton White can afford to be conservative in this football game, right? Doing everything you can to get after an inexperienced quarterback in SEC play. Because this is Carson Beck's first SEC game, as I've mentioned many times, right? If South Carolina can do that, I think they might have a shot. If they can't, and Carson Beck's comfortable from the jump, and Georgia's popping off 6-7 yards a carry, you can forget about it. It's going to be like the last couple of years in the South Carolina-Georgia series. Guys, something else I'm looking forward to, and the big question for me, does the youth movement continue in Athens? I don't think any of us believe it's a recipe for success or a recipe for an upset. It's the recipe for the upset to play a bunch of freshmen on the offensive line and just go youth at every position. But at the same token, if you're not going to win this football game anyways, getting those youngsters experience and having them step in and play meaningful minutes and meaningful snaps and getting that baptism by fire, if you will, against the Georgia Bulldogs, I think it could be beneficial. I absolutely think it could be. I wonder how much do we see of guys like a Trovon Bowe, like a Jatavius Shivers, like a Big Tree Babalade, like a Nick Harbor. Does Lenora Sellers have a special package? Defensively, obviously, Jelon Kilgore, I think you'll continue to see a lot of him, a guy that has 18 tackles through 2 games. We saw a lot of youth last week. I mean, a ton. Dontavius Braswell at running back, another one. Grayson Pup Howard, I think, who's going to have to play. Xavier McLeod at defensive tackle. Saw tons of youth against Furman. It was great to see South Carolina empty the bench. I'm not saying you do that again. What I'm saying is, did last week show this coaching staff that, hey, for us to have the best shot to win not just this game, but for down the road, We need to get these young guys out there. We need to throw them in the fire and see how they respond. I just wonder how much more of those guys do we see? Because while it may not be a recipe for an upset, it may not be a recipe for great success in this football game, getting those guys experience now, I think could pay off major, major dividends as we go throughout this season. And finally, guys, speaking of the recipe for an upset, the recipe for success in this one, could this be a repeat of 2019? The last time we saw the Gamecocks go into Athens, this type of spread, a day game, if you will, South Carolina did the unthinkable. Georgia right now, a 20-game home winning streak. The last team to beat them, you guessed it, it was the Gamecocks back in 2019. Could a repeat of 19 be on the horizon? Is it possible? Could we look up in the fourth quarter and see the Gamecocks leading this football game 24-21, and Georgia's on their heels, and Georgia's pressing, and all their hopes and dreams of 3 straight national titles are hanging on by a thread? And if not, realistically, even if South Carolina doesn't win, and I hate to burst your bubble, guys, but you know what? The Gamecocks might not win this football game. Even if they don't win, though, in my opinion, and I've said this many times this week, but I want to repeat myself one more time. You can call it moral victories. You can call it loser mentality. You know what I call it, guys? I call it progression. I call it seeing this program make progress under Shane Beamer. South Carolina keeping this game respectable matters. It matters. I understand that South Carolina lost by 41 to Georgia last year and still went and won 8 games. But if the Gamecocks want to be taken seriously, not just in local circles, but in conference-wide circles and national circles, they need to give Georgia a fight. This needs to be a respectable outcome. There's no shame in losing to Georgia 38-28, 38-24 even, what have you, making Georgia sweat through 3 quarters. There's no shame in that, guys. But losing by 41, losing by 29, losing by 27, doing what you've done over the last couple of years does nothing for your program. Doesn't help. Doesn't help what Shane Beamer's building. So again, you can call it a moral victory all you want. You can say, that's such a loser mentality. Either win or... Guys, be realistic for 5 seconds. If South Carolina is able to go out there, play fundamentally sound football, do some things both offensively and defensively, and just make Georgia sweat and play a close competitive ball game, at minimum through 3 quarters, we look up in the fourth and Georgia players aren't taking selfies with their own fans because they're up by 40 points, that would be a step in the right direction. And I don't give a damn who wants to say I'm soaking in moral victories, and I'm not saying hang the banner, guys. I'm just saying there's value in respectability in this contest. Many of us remember the years when this was a competitive ball game year after year after year. We've gotten away from that. And while I know this game falls off the schedule in 2024, it is imperative, in my opinion, that South Carolina, for the future growth of this program, start to show people that, hey, we may not be where they're at, but we're heading that direction versus trending the other way. Guys, let's jump into a quick break. On the other side, we're going to dive into my key matchups against the Dogs, as well as get our good friend Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate on the show. All that and more, guys, on the other side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge, where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars, That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle doggy ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, September the 14th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. We sit just over 48 hours away until toe meets leather in Athens, Georgia, the SEC opener between the hedges, guys. Looking forward to it. Gamecocks and Bulldogs, always a fun one. Please continue to flood us with your questions, your comments, and your calls as well. We'll take all of those in our Q&A Power Hour in hour number 3. Of course, guys, coming up actually in 10 minutes, we have our good friend Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate. We'll talk all things South Carolina, Georgia, as well as look at the rest of the slate as well. A ton to discuss with Marc Ryan. Appreciate him and looking forward to that conversation, guys. In the meantime, I've got 3 key matchups I'm most looking forward to from this Saturday's game in the Gamecocks take on the Georgia Bulldogs. My first key matchup And as I mentioned, South Carolina is going to have to find some semblance of balance, whether that's through swing passes, that's through bubble screens, or it's just the conventional run game. And I think South Carolina at times is going to have to use their run game, right? You can't just completely ditch it. They're going to have to hand the football off at some point. You cannot be one-dimensional in this game and have a chance to win. My first key matchup is in the running game specifically. Gamecocks running back Mario Anderson against Georgia linebacker Jamon Dumas Johnson. And who is Jamon Dumas Johnson, you may ask? He was named to the preseason Media Days All-SEC First Team, a Bronco Nagurski Trophy Watch List selection. He was named to the Butkus Award Watch List, the Lombardi Award Watch List, AP Preseason All-American First Team, Sporting News Preseason All-American First Team. This is a dude that you could argue is the best linebacker in all of college football. One of the best, brings immense physicality at 6'1", 245. Who can combat that? Who can combat that type of physicality? I look at a guy like Mario Anderson, who I thought was really, really good late in the ball game last week. I know it was Furman. I get that. I understand it was the Furman Paladins and their front seven, and you should have been able to have some success. But Mario Anderson, despite the opponent, showed us something last week we have not seen yet. And that was a running back running with an edge, running with tenacity, and running with a bad attitude, running with a chip on his shoulder, right? With all due respect to the Kerryon Joyner, Juju McDowell, Dontavius Braswell, none of those other guys have what Mario Anderson has on his resume that I think gives him that confidence and gives him that edge. It's the simple fact that, guys, Mario Anderson, despite the level, has been an RB1 before, and he's done it at an extremely high level, right? Won the Division II version of the Heisman Trophy. So this is the situation you're in right now when it comes to the Gamecocks running back room. I think we're going to see a bunch of different bodies, but I think for South Carolina in this football game, it's about physicality. It's about physicality in the running game. If you're going to generate a running game, even if you're just scratching out 3 or 4 hard yards per attempt, I think Mario Anderson's the guy that gives you the best chance to do that, and he will have to go head on with Jamon Dumas Johnson to generate anything on the ground for South Carolina. My second key matchup in this football game. Now, this probably changes if Nick Eamon-Warrior is able to go. We've been told folks are optimistic that he can play. But for the sake of the conversation, and we're going to assume, hey, we don't know right now 50-50 on E-Man. My second key matchup, Gamecock safety DQ Smith against Georgia tight end Brock Bowers. And we all recall what Brock Bowers did to the Gamecocks a season ago. It was ugly. It was abysmal. It was painful to watch. Guys, I still have nightmares thinking about what Brock Bowers did to South Carolina's defense, right? And so how do you guard him? I mean, it's so much easier said than done because Brock Bowers, the best tight end in all of college football, he's such a unique specimen in regards to a combination of size and of speed, and you can't put a linebacker on him because he's far too athletic. And typically a safety's not big enough. So what do? You'd prefer, I think, to have Nick Eamon-Warrior in this spot. Taking him on one-on-one and dealing with him, because I'll never forget, guys, last year in the South Carolina-Georgia game. Nick Eamon-Warrior went out with an injury. B.J. Gibson slides in. The very next play, Georgia goes right down the seam. Brock Bowers, touchdown. Easy pickings. So the status of Nick Eamon-Warrior in this one's big, but either way, I think it's going to take a safety to stop him. If it's not E-Man, it will be, I think, DQ Smith going mano-a-mano with Brock Bowers and controlling him in that Georgia passing game. And my third and final key matchup Saturday in Athens, as we mentioned, this is a first for a lot of folks in this game on Saturday. Georgia, a team that, has had to replace a lot. Mike Bobo at OC, 2 new offensive tackles. Carson Beck at quarterback. You look defensively, they lost Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith and, what those guys meant to their defense. But I want to go back to the quarterback thing really quickly. And, you think about what Stetson Bennett meant to Georgia. I don't think it gets nearly enough credit for what he did during his time in Athens, right? Leading that thing, back-to-back national championships. Sure, off the field, he's kind of whatever, but like one of the greatest players in Georgia history, right? When you consider what he did for them. Carson Beck is an immensely talented player. More talented, I think we probably all agree, than Stetson Bennett. Is he going to be as good as Stetson Bennett? We don't know that. We shall see. How does he handle pressure? Does he crack when things get tough? Does he crack under pressure when SEC defensive coordinators are coming at his throat? Well, we're going to find out Saturday. And my third and final key matchup is exactly that. Gamecocks defensive coordinator Clayton White against Georgia quarterback Carson Beck. Because I think there's different things you can do to put Carson Beck in some uncomfortable situations. Being more aggressive, sending the blitz, exotic blitz packages, stunting up front. Like, obviously, the first priority is slowing down the run. But, disguising coverage is another thing. But while slowing down the run is priority number one, you can do different things, I think, to get Carson Beck out of a rhythm and make Carson Beck sort of panic, if you will. Now, this is going to be a huge test for him, and we may be completely wrong. Maybe Carson Beck is as poised as they come, and if that's the case, it's going to be a tough day, tough sledding for South Carolina, probably either way. But, you're going to need turnovers in this football game. You're 27.5-point underdogs. I think for Clayton White and company, they need to be as aggressive as possible, send the house, force the issue when it comes to Carson Beck, make him make mistakes. You got to find a way to put this ball game on the right shoulder of Carson Beck. Once you do that, then it's about getting him to make mistakes. And if you put him in those positions, bottom line is, guys, we don't know how he's going to respond. Georgia doesn't know how he's going to respond. And so I'm just so curious to see, what does Clayton White dial up? Because the defense, guys, it hasn't been great through 2 weeks. It hasn't. Call it what it is. The defense has not been very good. You couldn't get any pressure against Drake May. It was 7-on-7 all game. And Georgia's offensive line, they haven't been perfect through 2 weeks. But my goodness, they are much, much, much better than what UNC rolled out there in week 1. Number one, you need to get Jatius Gear back off the edge. But what is South Carolina able to do in regards to generating a pass rush, in regards to creating some havoc and making Carson Beck see ghosts out there? Is there a way they're able to dial that up? So again, my 3 key matchups going into this football game on Saturday. The first key matchup, Gamecocks running back Mario Anderson against Georgia linebacker Jamon Dumas Johnson. My second key matchup, Gamecocks safety DQ Smith against Georgia tight end Brock Bowers. And my third key matchup, Gamecocks defensive coordinator Clayton White against Georgia quarterback Carson Beck. Guys, that being said, we now await our good friend Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, guys. Looking forward to chatting with all things Marc Ryan. Anyways, guys, y'all continue to flood the questions, the chat line, if you will. 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377 here on this Thursday. Let's see. Our guy Spur Your Enthusiasm, by the way, in case y'all want some enthusiasm, some optimism, some positivity here on this Thursday. Our guy Spur Your Enthusiasm says that South Carolina is going to beat Georgia. I think his score prediction was 44-21. And he's got Spencer Rattler throwing for over 500 yards. So, anyways, let's see. Oh, I do want to apologize, by the way. Apparently, the folks on Inside the Gamecocks could hear me yelling at the dogs during their ads. I think that's why they probably muted me. So, I do apologize. We actually had somebody come and fix something in the house, and the dogs just, of course, right when I jump on, right, the just perfect timing. Right when I jump on, dogs start going freaking just crazy. And so I'm yelling at them. I did not realize y'all could hear me, so I do apologize for that. My bad. Our guy Dalton in the Big Cock Club Discord said we always have one miracle game a season where we are 30-point dogs, but still figure out a way to win outright. Do you think it's possible that it's this Saturday? Is it possible? Sure. Is it probable or likely? I would say no. I would say no. Anyways, guys, we await our friend Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate. Anyways, Austin Hicks. So is the UAB transfer hurt? Again, we'll learn a lot more tonight. Carolina calls with Shane Beamer, but Drew Tuazama is the name of the player you're referring to. He did get nicked up, I believe. So, anyways, there it is. Yeah, 44-27. Spur your enthusiasm. Set pick over the Georgia Bulldogs. So hopefully that comes to fruition, and Spencer Rattler has the game that you also see him having Saturday in Athens. Guys, that being said, he joins us every single Thursday to talk Gamecocks, SEC, college football, and everything in between. Our good friend, Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate, who does a fantastic job on his show every single day, 3 to 7 Offsides with Marc Ryan. He joins us. Marc Ryan, what's going on, my friend? Appreciate you taking the time. How are you?
Man, pumped up. Away we go with the weekend. Chris Phillips, might a major upset be in store in Athens?
The fingers are crossed, Marc Ryan. The fingers are crossed indeed. And I promise, Marc, we will get there. We got a lot to discuss, a lot to get into, Marc. I do appreciate you. First thing I want to ask you is this. It's been 2 weeks, but are you worried about the state of the SEC right now? We see Texas A&M lose to Miami. Bama goes down to Texas. We saw LSU drop to Florida State. Are you worried about the conference at all moving forward?
You know what? I've talked to enough analytics guys this week, Chris, who tell me that the SEC is still far and away the best conference. But you can't deny that the artist formerly known as the All Cupcakes Conference is 4-1 against the SEC. And how totally heartbreaking is it that the Pac-12 now has 6 top 25 teams, and we are exactly, one offseason away from the entire left coast of the United States of America not even having a football conference anymore, Chris. That must have been the worst mismanagement I've ever seen in my life, Chris, for other conferences to deem that 10 of those 12 programs elevate their conference, right? But the current commissioner of the Pac-12 couldn't get anything better than a streaming deal, right? Which is the reason they broke up to begin with. They were about to sign that streaming deal, and hours beforehand, that fell apart. And I just think it's heartbreaking, man, when you consider they've been building up until that point. Look at the difference right now. The ACC and the Pac-12, Chris, have been in a battle for survival. The ACC is having its best season, right? Seemingly when it matters the most, and while the conference can still be saved. And the Pac-12 is doing the same when it's too little too late. Heartbreaking.
Now, Marc, as we look back on week 2, South Carolina gets the big bounce back win over Furman. Clemson gets a big bounce back win over Charleston Southern. It's ironically enough, both teams struggled out of the gate, especially Clemson, who was, 24-7 at halftime. What did you take away from both of the Palmetto State teams in their respective FCS games? I thought for South Carolina, you saw a youth movement and some good things happen late. Clemson obviously pulls away big, but I know you and I had this conversation early in the week, but leaving week 2, what stood out to you from the Gamecocks and Tigers taking down a couple of hapless FCS opponents?
Yeah, look, all positive on the Gamecocks front. They held Furman to 5 fewer points than I thought they would, and they scored 9 more points than I thought they would against Furman. However, Chris, you can't, if you do the good, the bad, the ugly is that Furman was equally ineffective running the football as South Carolina was. That's an FCS school. What does that bode? How does that bode the rest of the way? At the same time, man, Spencer Rattler, Gamecocks, you guys got a superstar quarterback. Do you realize that? I mean, you guys might be looking at the big picture here, but at the most important position, you know, 2 games last year was a blip. 5 games now is a trend. Spencer Rattler is very much trending right now. Chris, I continue to see you harping on the lack of national recognition, and you're exactly right. You know, the issue is, Chris, the quarterback play right now in college football is just insane. It's just through the roof. But if you tell me I got a game that I got to win, I got a fourth quarter where I really need a couple touchdowns, bro, you think I'm taking Bo Nix over Spencer Rattler? Is that because they got Nike's money behind them, or what? You know, every time I go to ESPN.com, I get besieged with Bo Nix commercials, Bo Nix advertising, Bo Nix banners. Have you ever seen more hype about nothing? Like, where's the beef on that guy's resume? You know what I mean? Wendy's has an ad campaign about that, man. It's called Where's the Beef? What has he done? Oh, yes, that's right. I think there was a 50-3 loss to Georgia last year. That's right.
Now, Marc, as we turn our attention to this week, and I'm glad you bring up the Spencer Rattler thing, because I was going to ask you, do you feel like he's not getting the national recognition that, I understand first 2 games, UNC and Furman's defenses, but I mean, when you're completing 83% of your passes, there's some quarterbacks that can't do that against air. So for him to do that in actual games, I don't care who the foe is, it's impressive. And the good news for South Carolina is, Marc, as we turn our attention to SEC play, thankfully beginning, right? Because enough with the FCS games, enough with the out-of-conference. Let's start to learn some things about these football teams. Having a confident Spencer Rattler is a great place to start. But you know as well as I do, Spencer Rattler's not the question going into Saturday in Athens. It's, can he get any help? And I know you and I spoke on this earlier this week. You feel like the Gamecocks are kind of a one-man wrecking crew at this point, a one-man team damn near. And you also know as well as I do that Georgia's defense is far too good to get beat by 1 or 2 guys. So when you look at this matchup, South Carolina going into Athens, they're a 4-touchdown underdog. How do you think the Gamecocks scheme around their deficiencies up front? Like, what can they do to help Spencer Rattler in this football game? Because he's shown if they do give him some help, he's going to give them a shot to compete and maybe even win this football game.
Well, first of all, every Gamecock fan should be insulted by that line, Chris. 28 points. I mean, at last check, Spencer Rattler beat 2 top 10 teams, right? I mean, that happened, right? So, Chris, here's what you may not know about Georgia. Do you know that last year, Georgia was 21st in America in pressure rate on the quarterback? You know what they are this year, Chris? Wait for it. 86th. Okay? Georgia is 86th in pressure rate through 2 games. Kirby Smart has been talking about it all week long, concerned about the lack of pressure on the quarterback. Chris, there are a lot of factors in this game that make me believe that South Carolina is not going to get humiliated and might even have a fighting chance. You know, when we gave our scores for this, I'm going to stick with the score I gave you. Georgia 31, South Carolina 20. That would be more than halving the spread, right? But you've got a quarterback who's on fire, a receiver, Xavier Legette, whom he loves throwing the football to, and you got a defensive line on Georgia that isn't getting pressure on the quarterback. Now, you tell me who has the quarterback edge, Georgia versus South Carolina. You tell me. That's the most important position, right? Now, you might have a point. Georgia has the edge everywhere else, but at the same token, man, that is a big edge for the Gamecocks. The lack of pressure that Georgia's front is providing, combined with Spencer Rattler completing 83% of his passes this year. I look at the last 3 scores in this game. Georgia won by 27. Georgia won by 29. Georgia won by 41. I look for a much, much more competitive game in Athens on Saturday.
Because I know you've talked about it a lot, Marc, especially going into week 1 against North Carolina, about the struggles on the line of scrimmage and how that gave you a lot of hesitancy to pick South Carolina to win that football game. We all know that Georgia's defensive front, I know that the pressure rating thing, they're a lot better than UNC's defensive front. Does that give you any angst or any worry going into Saturday? Like, if this game, I just think South Carolina is going to have to be far, far better on the offensive front to have any chance in this game, because as good as Rattler's been, they can't throw it 90% of the time and find success. Or do you think they could just air it out the entire game and ditch the run game completely? Because, conventional wisdom tells us you got to have some balance.
Chris, I think Rattler, there was a particular game, Chris, that's coming to mind right now for me, and it was the New England Patriots Pittsburgh Steelers game. Now, it's unfair to compare anyone to Thomas Edward Patrick Brady, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, in that game, there was a stretch where Bill Belichick threw the ball 26 consecutive times. Was asked about it after the game, and he gave a 5 or 6 word response. You don't run against the Steelers. You don't run against the Steelers. And New England won the game. Okay. He threw the ball 26 consecutive times. Spencer Rattler, Dowell Loggins, Shane Beamer, they need to answer that question. Do we have to run? Chris, you learn it's at the very elementary level of football. You like to run, right, to keep the defense honest, but also because it offers very few negative plays, right? When you drop back to pass, so many negative things can happen to you, right? From interceptions to no yardage on the plays to sacks, etc. So a running game is so incredibly helpful, but you don't have it. You do have a quarterback playing on a 9.5 level on a scale of 1 to 10. So again, Chris, you got a defensive line that's not getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Why not at a 3-to-1 ratio, pass to run? Run the ball 25% of the time. Chris, look, time is our most valuable resource, right? Are you a proponent of wasting time? Why waste time using plays that don't work? They're not working. The Gamecocks can't block up front. So hang 400 yards of offense on the board and have it be through the air. What difference does it make?
Mark, and I do agree with you because it's funny. I said over the summer that I thought South Carolina, because, we saw these issues in the running game coming from a mile away. When you looked at the offensive front, when you looked at the running back room, 70-30 is what I thought South Carolina needed to be, pass to run, and for better or for worse, whether that gets you a win Saturday or not. I think that's how they have to operate and, should operate moving forward. Now, defensively on the other side, Mark, you mentioned the quarterback advantage. I do agree with you. Gamecocks have the advantage there. I think we'd all agree that we'd probably say Carson Beck's more talented than Stetson Bennett. I don't think that's a hot take, but he's never been in this position, being QB1 in an SEC game. And Georgia's running game, to be fair, we talk about the questions with South Carolina. Georgia hasn't ran the football all that great through 2 weeks. They have not ran it up to the Georgia standard. Also, Ladd McConkey's 50-50. He's questionable. They do have a deep wide receiver room. They still have Brock Bowers. But, I think for Clayton White, the priority, Mark, has to be getting in his face, disrupting him, putting the game on his shoulder, and then getting him in some really uncomfortable situations and just seeing if he's willing to cough up the football. What say you?
Yeah, no, Chris, like 100%. And that's exactly what you have to do. Now, can I ask you this, Chris? What's the latest on Juice Wells? What are you hearing?
Oh, the curious case of Juice Wells. I'll tell you this, Mark. So this is kind of how things have gone with Juice Wells. We heard at the start of fall camp that he sustained an off-season injury to his toe, foot, whatever. I was told at that point by multiple people that he was going to miss the first 2 games and would probably be back for Georgia. And of course, here comes all of the spouting, the spewing by some of my own people, by the way, fading my injury report, saying I'm silly, I don't know what I'm talking about. Shane Beamer comes out, find some joy, pipe down, whatever. Anyways, we go into week 1. He's dressing out. He's ready to go. Juice tells me he's playing. That was the narrative. Juice says he's playing, whatever that means. As you know, he goes out there. He can't even last through the second half. He plays 1 half, has 1 catch or something. He's done. Last week, same thing. Tells me he's playing. He's practicing, whatever that means. He apparently played 30 snaps in the Furman game. He didn't make an impact. I didn't hardly even see him on the field. From what I'm hearing, Juice Wells is still dealing with that foot injury. And Dowell Loggins yesterday, I don't know if you saw this quote, Mark, but Dowell Loggins yesterday had this to say, because Shane Beamer, as much as we love him, he refuses to give any sort of clear answer on this injury. And, gamesmanship, I get it. He doesn't have to. That's his right. Dowell Loggins said this yesterday, quote, "It's been a process. He's overcoming an injury that most people, 99% of the world, wouldn't be back from. He's done a great job. He's ready to get out there, and he's hungry." So, Mark, this is how I'm operating, because I was made look foolish 2 weeks in a row, especially week 1, where if I knew Juice Wells wasn't 100% and wasn't his normal self, I would have picked North Carolina, and I would have been right. So I'm kind of kicking myself for that. But until I hear Shane Beamer, either 2 things, until I hear Shane Beamer say he's 110% cleared by doctors, ready to go back to his normal self, or I see Juice Wells on the field making the type of impact we know he can make and being the normal version of himself, I'm assuming he's not healthy. That's where I stand right now, Mark. And unfortunately, when your head coach leaves it to you to read between the lines, we have to start making our own assumptions. So as far as I know, I would not expect Juice Wells to be an impact player in this game on Saturday.
I mean, Chris, if he's full go, if he's 100%, he's wide receiver 1, right? I mean, like based on what we saw last year, based on what we know of his ability, right?
You would think so, Mark. That's why there's no way you're going to convince me he's full go, because the Juice Wells that we all know and love doesn't have one catch for 5 yards against Furman. It just doesn't happen. You know what I mean? So here's what I think happened, because we've been down this road before. I think what happened is Juice Wells broke his toe in the offseason, because that's what the rumor I heard the injury was. He broke his toe, and it was serious. And Shane Beamer wanted to play damage control and the fan base not panic, and doom and gloom set in. And so similar to Luke Doty back in 2021, and I'm not saying he's wrong for this, but I'm telling you what I think happened. I think he just kind of smoothed it out and has not really given the real honest, giving that out to people about the evaluation of this injury. I just think that's where we are, and I think Juice Wells is still recovering from it. And I hope I'm wrong and he goes out there and has 200 yards receiving Saturday, but you're not going to convince me he's been 100% the first 2 weeks. There's just no way.
Yeah, I mean, he's essentially non-existent.
And so I wanted to ask you that, Mark. Do other fan bases have this gripe? Does that happen? Is this a common thing in college football where like these maddening injury reports where you really don't know if guys are going to play or not from a weekly basis? Like, is that something you've ever found yourself with a Florida coach complaining about? Is like, I just feel like I'm in the dark about injuries and our best players are dropping like flies. Like, have you ever experienced that? Because that feels like a yearly thing with the Gamecocks at this point.
You know, Chris, I find it comical, honestly, when coaches do this. And Bill Belichick is notorious for this kind of stuff. He puts players that listed as questionable with a hangnail. You know what I'm saying? Right? So, but Chris, like North Carolina beat South Carolina 31-17. So what did playing coy about that accomplish outside of disappoint your own fan base? Man, where the hell is Juice Wells? You said he was good. You said he's practicing. If he can't play, why is he practicing? So it just, look, man, the way I run my show, Chris, the way you run your show is that honesty is the best policy. I owe you 2 things: to work as hard as I can on the show and to be honest with you. And you'll always get both our opinions the way we see them. So, Chris, it's just not what I would do, right? It's not what I would do. But as you know, Shane Beamer's tried very, very hard to control the narrative in Columbia. Find some joy. Tired of waiting for everyone around here to wait for the other shoe to drop around here. The attitude sucks. I mean, you've heard Shane Beamer say that, right? So it doesn't surprise me that, he wants to pump the sunshine a little bit. But in the end, that falls flat when you still lose to North Carolina. And the fans are wondering, WTF is going on with our best player, with our best offensive player?
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, too, Mark, and the thing that we need to make clear is I don't think anybody in the Gamecock fan base is like wanting to throw stones at Shane Beamer, but I think people are justifiably upset that South Carolina's, dare I say, best player, right? When I sent you my preseason top 10 Gamecocks, I had Juice Wells number 1 ahead of Spencer Rattler. Like, I think he's the best player on this football team still. Maybe now we got a 1A, 1B conversation because of the way Rattler's playing, but like, it's just frustrating, right? Because in a game like this against Georgia, where all the odds are stacked against you, you could really use a guy like that, especially with the downfield passing game like we're talking about. Back to the game, Mark, itself and on the field, you've picked a 31-20 loss. I want to ask you this because some folks will accuse, like if I were to tell you, Mark, I'd sign up for that right now. Some folks would accuse me of, oh, you're into moral victories or you have a loser mentality. Like, what do you say to that? Like, what do you think a competitive ball game, having a respectable ball game would mean? Because here's the reality, Mark. It's been ugly the last couple of years. South Carolina's 1-7 in their last 8 games against Georgia. The one win being the 2019 upset. Outside of that, every loss has been by double digits. And the last couple have been by 41, 29, 27. Like, am I onsides or offsides here when talking about, like, when you hear fans talk about some would label a more victory, but I just want to see progression, Mark. And I think a close game in Athens would at least show us that things are trending in the right direction.
Chris, what matters is your tone, right? Like if you're acting like the team won when they lost 31-20, that's when you've got a loser's mentality, right? But when you say, look, I can both be disappointed at the loss, but I'd have to be blind not to see progression taking place here. Because, Chris, that's what I'm forecasting for the Gamecocks on Saturday. A loss, but progression. A loss, but improvement. A loss, but a feeling as though, man, with Spencer Rattler, if we're in the game with Georgia, we can be in the game against everybody, right? Like, and that's how I think Gamecock fans are going to feel. Now you couple that with hopefully an improving offensive line. I mean, hell, it can't get worse, right? An improving running game. I mean, hell, it can't get worse, right? And Juice Wells returning to health. Rattler and company getting more and more comfortable with a new offensive scheme. And what you have, Chris, could very well be a repeat of last year when the team is kind of peaking right at the right time, right towards the end of the season. Thank God, Chris, we're not getting Clemson against South Carolina right now. I mean, that would be the bad news bears on a football field, man, the island of misfit toys. Can you imagine what that game would look like right now? South Carolina's offensive line, Cade Klubnik throwing pick sixes to high school teams. Imagine what that would look like.
Yeah, Mark, it's bad when after the Duke game I tweeted, jokingly said that I can't wait to watch 5-6 Clemson take on 5-6 South Carolina for a chance at a trip to a bowl game. And I think everybody thought that was pretty funny, actually, on both sides. So that was nice. See orange and purple and garnet and black agree on something. So
yeah.
Mark, again, you've locked in your score prediction 31-20. Obviously, you're expecting a valiant effort from the Gamecocks. If South Carolina was to go into Athens and do the unthinkable, it'll be because of what?
Yeah, +2 in the turnover margin, Chris. I mean, look, Chris, to go back to the NFL, historically speaking, Chris, the teams that are top 5 in turnover margin in the NFL have a winning percentage of 750. The teams that are bottom 5 have a winning percentage of 300. Okay, think about that for a minute. Now, how do you make that happen? Well, Spencer Rattler, all he has to do is what he's done this year, which is not throw an interception, right? Don't fumble the football. Don't turn the football over. New quarterback at Georgia, right? Maybe you get a pick or two through the air. Maybe you get a fumble on the ground. +2 in the turnover margin, okay? And then, Chris, limiting the big plays against Georgia defensively, kind of having the bend but don't break mentality. If I'm South Carolina, I'm having that mentality where I'm going to wait for Georgia to make a mistake, okay? Because new quarterbacks tend to do that, right? So, Chris, I do – call me crazy, man. I don't think the path to a victory for the Gamecocks is as far-fetched as some make it seem. As a matter of fact, Chris, I don't necessarily believe that South Carolina's got a worse chance to beat Georgia this weekend than Clemson does to beat Florida State next weekend. You see what I'm saying? Like, I do believe that South Carolina is going to be competitive against Georgia this weekend, and I'm not sure Clemson is going to be competitive against Florida State. You've got a quarterback advantage. They're not rushing the passer well. They're not getting pressure on the passer well, okay? Can you win the turnover battle? Can you be +2 there? And then can Shane Beamer, the Beamer lineage on special teams, create a splash play on that side of the ball? You get one splash special teams play. You win the turnover battle by 2. Rattler just being Rattler. Chris, you got a ball game, man. This is not that far-fetched. And I think this will be the game, and this would piss me off if I'm a Gamecock fan, Chris, but this could very well be the game where people are like, well, Georgia's not the same Georgia. Well, what about what we did at South Carolina? What we did that to them? Georgia doesn't look like Georgia this year, does it? Do they? You could be hearing that after this Saturday, Chris.
Mark, you and I spoke earlier this week on your airwaves, which, in case folks do not know, every Monday, 4:40, you and I chop it up. A lot of fun. Appreciate you having me on the airwaves every week. But we talked earlier this week about reevaluating our predictions or what have you. And as I told you, and I know you're the same, like, we're not really in a business of changing season predictions week to week because you could drive yourself batty. But I will ask you, both of us locked in 7-5. We had a little bit different paths to getting there. But if Spencer Rattler is able to, if this is who he is the entire 2023 season, does that change your projection for South Carolina season at all? Do they maybe overachieve that 7-5 pick that you and I both had for them in the preseason?
And it's if Rattler does what?
If Rattler if the guy we've seen the first 2 weeks is who Spencer Rattler is. I'm not saying he's going to complete 83% of his passes all year, but if he's more so the good version of Rattler versus the not so good version, like if this is who he is now and he's able to be a consistent contributor, not be a turnover machine, right? Be more what he was toward end of last season versus first 10 games. If he's able to give them that type of production, does that change your predictions at all? Or did you expect this from the jump, I'll say?
No, Chris. I mean, I haven't seen anything from South Carolina yet that has shocked me. I had him beating Furman. I had him losing to North Carolina. And my end of season prediction is 7-5, right? You and I, Chris, when we made our predictions, the best case for South Carolina was 9-3. The worst case was 5-7. If you look at it right now, Chris, and factoring in where Clemson is, or namely where Clemson isn't, there are 6 50-50 games remaining on South Carolina's schedule, right? Should they go 4-2 in those 50-50 games, 8-4 is absolutely on the table. And you know how, Chris, we always would say, man, these Alabama quarterbacks, like, look at Mac Jones in the NFL, look at A.J. McCarron in the NFL. Why does that happen? Well, you know why it happens. It's because in college, they have far better talent than everybody else, right? So they look good with far superior talent. Look at how Spencer Rattler is looking with far inferior talent, with Charlotte and Mercer and Yale offensive linemen trying to play SEC football. Brother, if he can do this with that, if he can make chicken salad out of chicken spit, imagine how he's going to look behind an NFL offensive line. Chris, back to the point at hand, absolutely. Everything that Gamecock fans dreamed of before the season is very much still on the table.
Mark, before we get you out of here, of course, we had to highlight the SEC slate this weekend, and the top matchup, of course, is the one down in Gainesville. Tennessee comes to town, a 6.5-point favorite. Tennessee has won twice in the Swamp in the last 51 years, which is a crazy stat. They haven't won there since 2003. How are you feeling about the Gators this weekend as they host Joe Milton in Tennessee?
I can't offer an objective thought, Chris. I can't.
Let me ask you this: Where does Tennessee rank on your list of teams you hate? Are they number one?
Oh, dude, I can't. One of the greatest joys of my life, Chris, was last year we went to Neyland Stadium. No one was there. No one stopped us from going in. I did the chomp. We posted the chomp all over. That was a great feeling. Dude, I got a story for you real quick, okay? I was in Knoxville, Tennessee, okay? I was in Knoxville, Tennessee. Hang on, let me grab my charger real quick. Sorry about that, brother.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was in Knoxville, Tennessee, and going to get barbecue, right? And I got an orange and blue jacket on. And the barbecue owner comes up to me, the restaurant owner comes up to me and says, sir, I want you to know, you're more than welcome to eat at this establishment, but if you do, we will spit in your food. The owner of the restaurant came up and said that to me, and I'm like, bro, you're turning down business? Like, you're turning, things we can never have enough of, Chris. One of them is not rated G. The other one is money, okay? We can never have enough money, right? So the reality is you're turning down money. And it's just like, driving home, Florida won that game. There's a fan shaking a Neyland bobblehead out of her car at us. And it's just like, these people are nuts. They're nuts. Chris, I have no idea what to expect. Joe Milton only has 2 passes all year long, over 20 yards, okay? Clemson has more explosive plays on the season than Tennessee does. So we're going to see what's going to happen, man. I was actually fascinated to hear your projection. I just have no idea. I have no idea. If Florida wins, I could see it being 21-20. If Tennessee wins, I could see it being 36-3. Okay? Seriously.
Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate.
What do you think? What do you think?
So I'll spoil this one because I typically lock in my predictions on Fridays. I think that the narrative all week long has been about Tennessee, their struggles at the Swamp, and that's – I'm hammering Tennessee, man. I'm hammering the Vols. I just – Tennessee's
I gotta
the
go,
better –
Chris. I gotta go.
Now, I'll say this on the Florida side. This could be the game. Like, I think Florida should play this game like no holds barred, nothing to lose, throw it all out there. Because if they win, this is the game that could completely flip the East on its head, could flip Florida's season. All of a sudden, you're thinking, okay, maybe the Gators overachieve, get to 8 wins, which, again, feels weird to say for Florida, but that's the state of the program. But, like, you can flip the season completely if you win this football game. Because, Mark, my biggest thing about Florida is this. I still don't feel like we really know all that much about them. I mean, all I know about Florida is this. They went to Utah and lost to a Utah team that I think half of this league would have lost to. South Carolina would have gotten obliterated by Utah. The way they played in week 1 against UNC, they would have lost, right? So, like, they lost to a good Utah team, and then they beat up on McNeese. We don't know anything. We know nothing about Florida other than that. They got to get the running game going with Montreal Johnson, Trevor Etienne. If they do that, I think the defense is going to be respectable. I think the defense is going to give Joe Milton some fits. With that being said, though, I've got Tennessee winning the football game. I just think at the end of the day, man, talent wins. I think Tennessee's got more of that right now. And I think the big thing for Tennessee is everybody's going to be talking about Joe Milton, their weapons, but what their line of scrimmage has done, especially defensively. I know they've played nobody, but 11 sacks in 2 games. They're going to be all over Graham Mertz all night long. And I just, until we see it from Graham Mertz, it's hard for me to say that, you know, he's going to be able to withstand that and lead Florida to a win. So I think people are going to get lost in the Tennessee can't win the Swamp narrative thing and not realize that once that ball's kicked off, that has nothing to do with who's going to win this game. It has nothing to do with it. So unless what?
Why do I consider you a friend talking about my school report? Why do I do that?
Like you said, Mark, about your show, there's only 2 obligations I have to you is to work my tail off and be honest. And I'm being honest. So
well, I'll tell you what, man. I'll tell you what. South Carolina has this game on their schedule next week against Mississippi State. And that is, if Florida doesn't win this game, batten down the hatches for a long season. I mean, this is the game that you have to win if you want to make anything of the current season you are in, right? That is this game for the Florida Gators.
Yeah.
If they lose, Florida's going to have the down year that everyone expects. If they win, hey, maybe cautious optimism here. Maybe it's that Tennessee isn't that great, but maybe some cautious optimism here on the Gators sideline. So that game for the Gamecocks is next week against Mississippi State. And you know I'm right. You know I'm right.
Yeah.
1 and 2 after this week, you can't stare 1 and 3 in the face.
Yeah. I mean, I had, you know, in my 7-5, Mark, you might recall, you know, I had the Gamecocks beating UNC and then dropping an upset to Mississippi State. So now you've lost to UNC. So you got to make that up somewhere. And I'd agree with you. If you fall to 1 and 3, we're looking way too far ahead, obviously. But if you fall to 1 and 3, I think some very not so friendly realities come to reality, or at least possibility, if you will. So it'll be fun talking about it next week, breaking it all down, and looking forward to it. Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate, Offsides of Marc Ryan every single day, 3 to 7 at Marc Ryan on air on social media. Mark, appreciate you taking the time, my friend, and fingers crossed that your score prediction, if not better, comes true this weekend in Athens.
The angry birds in the chat are cracking me up here today, Chris. So appreciate all you guys. Thank you so much. Chris, have a good weekend. Good luck to the Gamecocks. More competitive than the experts think. We'll see you next week.
Mark, you're the man. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, bud.
Great stuff, guys, from Marc Ryan of the Van Upstate again. He's got it locked in 31-20. And I think a lot of Gamecock fans out there would look at that score and say, okay, we can work with that. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break, not a final break. We got the Q&A Power Hour upcoming. I want to hear from you, but we are going to jump into a quick break on the other side. All of your questions, your comments, your calls, and more here on this Thursday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, September the 14th, 2023. Hope you're all doing well. We have entered the Q&A Power Hour. The phone lines are open. We're taking your questions, your comments, Your calls as well. 843-790-3377. Without further ado, let's jump right
Spencer Rattler
into it. Spencer Rattler, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, man? What's up, man?
What's going on,
man? I'm glad to be on the show, man.
I love it. What's up, man?
We're about to kick some butt, ain't we?
Yeah, we're about to kick some butt, indeed.
Yeah. Butt,
yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan, man. Hey, I really want to see your balls.
My balls or my Beamer balls?
Nah, I want to see your real balls, man. I like Beamer balls too, though.
Let me ask you this, Spencer. What does the word Spider-Man mean to you?
Spider-Man, man, he's a dope character, man. I like Spider-Man. Hey, but Spider-Man, you know what's really good about Spider-Man?
What's that?
Guess what's really good?
What's good about Spider-Man?
Hey, man, guess Spider-Man's got some good, he gives good head. Not gonna hold. You give some good head too, sir.
I can't even. I can't even let it continue. I will say the bit is funny. The bit is funny. Okay. What a way to kick it off. 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377 here on this Thursday. What a way to get it going. Anybody want to top that? Anybody want to top that call? I've got a feeling, by the way, we haven't really had this happen in the first two games. I got a feeling we're getting some troll calls after
your enthusiasm.
After the Georgia game. Let's jump to the phone lines here. Spur your enthusiasm. What's up, my friend? How you doing?
What's up? Y'all ready? It's your boy Spur Your Enthusiasm. I'm here to let y'all know the South Carolina Gamecocks are going into Athens, and Shane Beamer has got a vet appointment for his Bulldogs to neuter that son of a bitch because the Gamecocks are going to whoop some ass this weekend. Go inside.
You yelled so hard, your baby's crying in the background, but I respect the hell out of it, my friend. I respect the hell out of it.
But yeah, man, we got to get ready because it's gonna be interesting. Yep, y'all said, I got 44-27. The Gamecocks are gonna go in. We're gonna need some magic, but the magic is there. The magic is coming, and come here, Corey. Say, go Gamecocks. Okay. All right, go inside, sweetie. All right, I'm going to let y'all go on that note.
Bryce, you're the man. Great stuff.
Let's go.
Let's do it. Let's do it. To hell with Georgia. How about spur your enthusiasm? We are off. We are off and running. Things are unhinged on a Thursday. My goodness. Things are unhinged when it comes to the phone lines. All right, we got a text here. It says, dude, this show is just off the rails right now because I got a text that says, do you think Mario Anderson gets more carries than Dak Joyner this weekend? He seemed to run the ball pissed off as if someone peed in his Fruit Loops. Anyways, the Bulldogs are dumb as heck. Cox by 90. Do I think Mario Anderson gets more carries than Dak? It's tough to say. I think they'll be about equal because I think they're going to use all four running backs. I really do. At least three of the four. I don't know if Dontavius Braz will quite see the field, but I'll say they're equal on carries. So anyways, guys, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Let's go back through some of your questions here on YouTube. USC edits. If we throw it in the flats and run it up the middle without being very creative, it's going to be a long day. Yeah, if there's no offensive creativity, it could be a very, very long day, no doubt. Let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
Nick.
Nick, what's going on, man? How are you?
Doing good, Chris. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you asking. What's going on?
Not much. I don't know if I can top that last phone call, but I'll give it a shot.
the reason I'm really optimistic about this weekend versus Georgia is because you look back at the Tennessee game last year, and I think this Georgia team is nowhere near as good as Tennessee was last year. I think Beamer. I think I would just look at Hendon Hooker and all them. I mean, Jalen Hyatt. I mean, I just don't think Georgia's got that kind of firepower. And going to the Mario Anderson side of running back, I think it would pay this team big dividends to use him, even if we go to, like you say, 70-30 passing, because he's been a running back his whole life, or his whole college career, high school probably too. And Dak hasn't. Not taking nothing away from Dak, he's a phenomenal athlete. But having a running back there pass blocking that has done it their whole career at a more natural way than what Dak has, not being a running back until this year, I think will pay big dividends for this team this year. And not only this year, but this Saturday. But I can see South Carolina knocking them all. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by no means. But I mean, I think it could be 31-28 or South Carolina be up by 4 where Georgia's got to go down and score and not able to do it. Just because I don't think Carson Beck's that guy. I think their best quarterback is either Vandergriff or Gunnar Stockton. I don't think their best quarterback's playing right now. But like I said, I think Carolina's going. I think that I'm optimistic they can win. But I'll leave it with you. I know you probably got a lot of phone calls and text messages and stuff. I just wanted to call in and give my 2 cents for a few minutes.
Nick, I appreciate the call, man. Great stuff. Thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, man. Take care. 2022 Tennessee is a better football team than 2023 Georgia. That is a take. That is a take. That is a hell of a take. What do y'all think? Yeah. That is a hell of a take. I want to pose this question. Okay. I'm not, it's funny. I saw some dude, I think his CH was his name or something. You make money off being a negative asshole, whatever. Bro, like there are other entities out there that will sunshine pump your ass all week long if you want to go follow them. But to be fair, like, bro, did I not pose early in the week? There's a real path and a recipe to an upset. Like I've been talking like, hey, there is a chance. It is possible. Carolina can do this. They should be able to hang with Georgia, cover 28. Like people want to take one piece of content from TSUS and label us as negative and like he's just doom and gloom. He's this, that, whatever. Like, no, bro, I just see all sides of things. So like, I'm going to give you all the reasons why Carolina can pull the upset. I'm going to give all the reasons why I think it won't happen. And then I'll give you a prediction. And all I promise to be, as Mark Ryan said, is work my damn ass off and be honest, right? And be real with you. That's it. It's worked out pretty well to this point. But I pose this question, and I'm not asking this in like a condescending way. After the North Carolina game, I understand that South Carolina just beat Furman. And it was a very fun game, and it was a game that Carolina bounced back and did some great things. What is giving you confidence? These people out there that are calling in, picking a 31-28 game or picking a Gamecocks W, after what we saw against UNC in week 1, what is giving you this confidence that South Carolina is going to completely transform as a football team and take down Georgia? Like, I'm not asking to be condescending. I'm asking because I want to know. I think it's like, I don't know, man. I think it is, and I'm going to read this text, by the way, that I'm going to say is from someone anonymous, not going to say his name. He says, we could be playing the damn Kansas City Chiefs, and people would call in and say they feel good and we're going to win. Honestly. Guys, 843-790-3377. Brian Dean, South Carolina, Georgia. Georgia's a 27-point favorite. The key in this game is Spencer Rattler. Starting fast, Rattler to Leggett. Can you take advantage of Georgia's slow starts? Can you take advantage? So, let's see. Back to the text line we go. Bo says, with Brown being questionable this weekend, do you think we'll see a good game From Eddie Lewis, and do you see Harbor getting more snaps and targets, and how do you think they fare against the Georgia secondary? I think we absolutely see more from Eddie Lewis. I mean, I thought there was a chance he could be, South Carolina's wide receiver 2 coming in this season, and certainly Xavier Legette has filled in that role, if not being wide receiver 1. But I think Eddie Lewis can still be, a big-time player for South Carolina, and I think they will utilize him Saturday night, especially with Amarian Brown maybe still battling that injury and may not be back. And I don't see why you wouldn't use a Nick Harbor. You know what I mean? Like, what are you saving him for? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand why you wouldn't. So, let's see. A damn beast. I went on his show. He said, "Have a great show, Chris. Go Dogs." Y'all go check out the conversation I had with the damn beast media. Really good dude. We had a great conversation. I appreciate him giving me the opportunity to speak on everything South Carolina, Georgia, and look ahead to the game this weekend. Let's see. Just kind of going through your questions here. We go to the Discord as well. Let's see. So we actually have somebody in our Discord named Spider-Man 3001, which it gives me the shakes, but whatever, it is what it is. He says, so if South Carolina pulls the upset, it has to be a mucky game like 20-17, but you also say Rattler has to have a Heisman performance. How does a quarterback have a Heisman performance and only score 20 points? Please explain, elaborate, what have you. I mean, Spider-Man, if South Carolina is able to generate virtually zero running game, and I mean, I think him throwing 2 or 3 touchdowns, like I don't think you're going to score a touchdown in the running game, like being able to manufacture offense that way. Maybe it's a 24-20 game, but I think that score stands. Like, I'm in no universe, Spider-Man, do I see Spencer Rattler throwing 5 or 6 touchdowns. I don't see that. I think if Spencer Rattler took the Gamecocks into Athens, went 24 of 38 for 315 with 3 touchdowns, no picks, and Carolina won 21-20, I think all of a sudden he's in that type of conversation, right? Like maybe his numbers won't be as flashy, but he's going to put up big yardage in regards to passing yards because South Carolina can't run the football. So that's where I come up with that thought process. So I apologize for not elaborating on that. Brennan M says, it's simple. CP doesn't know ball. We know this. I think Brennan M was the same one that was touting that Bama was going to beat Texas all week long and how silly it was. Anybody would insinuate otherwise. Also was touting all preseason that it was silly. Anybody was gassing up North Carolina, their defense, what have you. And sure enough, we saw what happened. So I don't know. I don't know. Brennan M, I don't know, my man. Hold the L and keep it moving, I guess. Spider-Man says, I heard a guy on the radio today that said that Georgia could beat South Carolina without throwing a single pass. We must not accept this slander, must defend our team. Beamer will turn South Carolina into a powerhouse very soon. I don't know if that's really the case, if they could, if they could beat the Gamecocks without throwing a pass, but they're going to run the football, no doubt. If the South Carolina can't slow it down, it's going to be a very, very, very long afternoon indeed. Let's see. Continuing through your questions here on this Thursday. Marc Powell. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much. Says loves the show. Let's see. Marc Powell says everyone needs to come to grips with our run game. Being defined as quick out, screen passes is technically a long handoff to get the player in space. I mean, again, man, I don't know how you run the football against Georgia. Like, what has changed from 2 weeks ago against UNC to now? That's my question. What has changed so drastically, right? Coach Ford, what's going on? He says, we must dominate time possession. Problem is we cannot run the ball. Rock, meat, hard place. The information station. Sellers needs to play. He can run and pass. Georgia has a history of not being able to stop running quarterbacks. Spencer Rattler ain't coming out of the game, man. It's just I would like to see some different packages where maybe sellers can help you, but you know. Brad Perkle. I know it's only been 2 games, but I can't help but think what this offense could be with Wells, Brooks, Van, and Leggett. Yeah, I mean it's a shame, Brad, to think that like what the offense could have been last year. It is a shame. Spur your enthusiasm. Apologize to my daughter. Chris. Dude, you're good. Bryce, you're good. She always gets excited when she hears me talking about the Gamecocks. The apple didn't fall far from the tree. We're all maniacs over here. Spur your enthusiasm. I loved it, my friend. Thank you. I loved it. That was incredible. Andrew says, how does special teams come into play? More so, what about trick plays? I think special teams need to play a big role for sure. Whether it's a kickoff return, it's a punt return, it's a block kick, it's a block punt, what have you. It needs to play a major role for South Carolina. There's no question. It needs to play a major role. I think for South Carolina to pull the upset, realistically, those are the type of big plays you need to make. Trick plays, we'll see. I mean, I definitely think this is a week to empty the kitchen sink, as I said before, just go all out in this football game and leave nothing, hide nothing, right? Hide nothing in the football game. So, I will be excited and curious to see if they use something with Luke Doty, DeCarrion Joyner, Spencer Rattler, obviously getting a trick play in there, but just doing something to catch Georgia off guard. And, we'll see how it goes, but going to be interesting for sure. Anyways, let's see. 843-790-3377. Spider-Man 3001 said in the Discord, CP is a terrible nickname because my name is Chris Phillips, CP. I mean, I think it's a terrible nickname if you are like 10 years old or younger and you are that absurd to I don't know. Anyways, I'll just keep thoughts to myself either way. Let's see. What do y'all got, man? As we get closer to kickoff, how are you feeling about the potential of an upset? Do you feel better? Do you feel worse? Andrew says, I think it's super realistic to say they might be able to hold on the first half and our defense will begin to fail holding out in the second half. I mean, guys, I see scenarios where South Carolina is able to keep this game close and make it a fourth quarter game. It just goes against everything we've seen to this point, right? It goes against everything we've seen to this point. I mean, there's nothing that we have seen on the field of play that says that South Carolina is going to give Georgia hell for 4 quarters. We just haven't seen it. I'm not, overreacting to a win against an FCS Furman team. And I'm also not overreacting to Georgia just kind of sleepwalking through 2 weeks of playing lesser opponents. So I'd love to see it, guys. I mean, like I told you all, at some point, rubber meets the road. And at some point, man, you can't just keep saying, well, Georgia's just so good, man. Like, they're so talented. What are we going to do? Like, it's okay. We just lose by 40. No big deal. Like, there are other teams that are able to scheme around it and to make it work. I just, why can't South Carolina do that? Why can't South Carolina do that? Michael Edwards says it's getting that 2019 feeling. Ryan Cawthorn, what changed from Florida to Tennessee last year is the same type of question. Well, Ryan, if it happens, South Carolina will do something they've never done in the Shane Beamer era, which is have significant success early in the season. We've seen South Carolina catch fire late in the season, never early in the season. So it'll be one hell of a sign if they're able to do that. And, we'll see. I'm not, guys, I'm going to lock in a prediction tomorrow. And again, I've laid out the path to what I think could happen, why this could be like 2019, why a massive upset could happen. But I'm also not somebody that, I'm sorry, but if you're calling in and you're making a prediction based off of hopes and dreams and living in fantasy land. And I that's not how I operate. Like when I make predictions, when I make projections, like last year, for example, I don't kick myself for picking Tennessee to beat South Carolina 59-13. I just don't do it because based off of what we had seen on the field, that was the right pick. You know what I mean? That was the right pick. And so if South Carolina goes out, they prove us all wrong, that'll be great. But I just, all I know is what I've seen on the field of play thus far. And I mean, this team has only reaffirmed all the problems that we thought they had, which is the O-line was not going to be very good, a deficiency, no running game. Defense is paper thin up front. You know what I mean? Like the things that we thought this team had problems with, they do have problems with. Doesn't mean the path to success and a path to an upset's not there. It just means that if the upset does happen, things we have not seen at this point and things that go against conventional wisdom will have to take place. Guys, that being said, let's go ahead and jump into a quick break on the other side. I want to continue to hear from you, more of your questions, comments, calls, and more. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
That's your Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, September the 14th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. We are continuing on taking your questions, your comments, and your calls as well. 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Are you guys interested in any of the other SEC games this weekend? Of course, I'm very, very excited to watch two specifically, LSU and Mississippi State, and then Florida and Tennessee in the late game. So how about this? Tennessee has punted the ball 9 times this season. That's tied with South Carolina for the most in the SEC. Let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
Peyton.
Peyton, what's going on, man? How are you?
Good. How about yourself, Chris? What's going on, man?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you asking. What's up?
I'm down here just walking off the beach down here in Caligny Plaza in Hilton Head.
Wow. Okay.
And,
Okay. Love some Caligny Plaza. Love some Hilton Head. That's awesome.
Absolutely, man. I'm thinking about taking a ride up to Carolina Cigars here after a while. I like it.
Yeah. Bro, please do, and let them know we sent you, man. Tom and Eric and those guys, they'll definitely take care of you.
Absolutely, man. I'm thinking I might ride up here in just a little bit. But, you know, I can't miss my daily call. I can't do it even when I'm on the. So, man, I think with all the question marks we have going into this game, especially up front, like I said yesterday, it's going to be a big key to not shoot ourselves in the foot and put ourselves behind the chains at 1st and 15, 2nd and 15. Because it always shapes up for 3rd and long, and you just can't expect an offense to do that over 60 minutes, especially against a defense as talented as Georgia. But so I touched on that yesterday. But another thing that I don't think many people are taking into account, you might, but in order for us to pull the victory out in Athens, some craziness is going to have to occur. Like you touched on it a good bit, the turnover margin, we're going to have to win by 3+. I think that's going to be pretty accurate, and if we win this game, we're going to have to force, at bare minimum, at least 2 turnovers, and we're going to have to keep our fingers crossed for some chaos. Maybe a Georgia self-inflicted turnover. Maybe they're not as disciplined as they should be up front, or maybe they have some ill-advised penalties or what have you. But I just think the chaos factor is going to play a big factor if we pull the W out.
Yeah, Peyton, to your point, I think it'll have to be a chaotic game, no doubt. I don't think South Carolina, I mean, let's call it for what it is, man. I don't think the Gamecocks are good enough to line up and just beat Georgia mano-a-mano. I don't think South Carolina has even remotely as much talent as Georgia has. So it'll have to be a weird game. It'll have to be a weird set of circumstances. And that's not an insult, a slight to the Gamecocks or Beamer or the players. But, I mean, dude, we're talking about the back-to-back national champions. Like, tip your cap, give some respect. Georgia's who they are for a reason. They're number 1 in the country for a reason. They're picked to win the SEC by everybody for a reason. And so South Carolina will have to make some weird things happen. And so if they can do that, I think that, I think certainly the Gamecocks can make this a 4th quarter game, and who knows, maybe do the unthinkable.
Yeah. And, I think a couple more points to add on to that. I think, we touched on a little bit yesterday. You and I necessarily didn't, but you did, about having to sell out on the run and make Carson Beck beat you. I think you're going to have to play this whole game, all 60 minutes, balls to the walls. You can't, like you said, if you expect to line up straight up and down beat Georgia, it's not going to happen. That's one of the things that really solidified the whole Fire Must Chant movement for me was when you see us playing Clemson, you see dives, You see ISO. You see counters being ran. Nothing, no trick plays, no going for it on fourth down, just punting the ball and expecting to beat a team as talented as Clemson was, straight up and down. You're just not gonna do it, especially when the talent discrepancy is so big with a team like Georgia. And I just think the other point I was gonna try to make was, if we find ourselves in a advantageous scenario late in this ball game, we cannot get complacent, or we cannot be scared to go win this ball game.
Mm-hmm.
I think teams like Missouri and teams like Kentucky, teams that play Georgia close every other year, I think if they find themselves having a lead in the fourth quarter or being a one-score ball game in the fourth quarter, I think they get a little bit scared to go win it. You know, they feel like they start getting all fat and happy on moral victories, and that they just kind of get afraid to go win it. And I think if we find ourselves in that position, we cannot be afraid to go after their throat and put the dagger in it late. You know, if we find ourselves in an advantageous scenario late in the game, we still got to be throwing it deep. Whatever was getting us success early in the ball game, we got to keep replicating that in order for us to seal it. I think we can't be scared to win this ball game.
It's why I'm wearing a T-shirt today, Peyton, that says "Drop Yo Nuts," because I think that should be the mentality for South Carolina this weekend, and play with nothing to lose. I mean, that's kind of the beautiful thing, right? Like, there's no pressure on South Carolina. If you lose this game, hey, who cares, right? Who cares? It's you're expected to lose.
Exactly.
If you win it, you have everything to gain, nothing to lose. Georgia's got something realistically to lose. Play that way. Play free, play loose, throw it all out there, and just kind of see what happens when the dust settles, if you will.
Yeah, and to add to that point, you know, if we drop this game, all of our season goals are still ahead of us. We're kind of in the same predicament as Alabama or Clemson. You know, all of our goal, well, maybe not Clemson because they already dropped the ACC game, but like Alabama, you know, all the goals that you still want to have for this season, win a conference championship or be in the playoff, that's for Alabama's case, obviously. But for our case, if we drop this game, we still have potential to grab. I think the goal should be second place in the East, but we still can get third place in the East. We can still finish ahead of Florida, Missouri, Vandy. You know, we can still finish ahead of those teams. So if we go into this game with no fear of losing, no fear of winning, just going out and playing our game. But like I said, we can't go in there. Our coordinators can't expect our guys to straight up and down beat these guys head up, because this is not going to happen.
Peyton, well said, my friend. I'm hoping for the best. Looking forward to hopefully a big upset on Saturday. But man, either way, I know you're going to have a great weekend, my friend. Enjoy yourself in Hilton Head. Definitely, like I mentioned, stop by Carolina Cigars. My guys Tom and Eric, they'll take care of you, and just let them know that TSUS sent you. And again, they'll make sure they hook you up. So
absolutely, man. Chris, I appreciate it, man. I know I told you I'd lock in my prediction today. I'm gonna make you wait one more day. I'm gonna call in tomorrow. Still gonna be down in Hilton Head, and I'll lock in my prediction tomorrow after you post yours. I'll lock it in for you. And like you said, man, I'm gonna have a great time down here in arguably the best beach on the planet. And we'll holler at you tomorrow. You stay cool out there. Thanks for us up, show. Go Cox, buddy. I appreciate it, Chris.
Peyton, you're the man. I appreciate it, man. Take care. Great stuff, as always, from Peyton down there in Hilton Head, man. I'm jealous. I'm a little bit envious down there. Caligny Plaza. What a great place that is. Let's see. Chris Taylor with a very just drop the mic type opinion. Beamer ain't building a powerhouse, getting FCS linemen out of the portal. Something's got to change here. Same old, same old. I mean, Chris Taylor, listen, to your point, I was very critical about it after game one. And, you know, if this season doesn't get turned around and the offensive line doesn't improve and Carolina, let's say, falls short of expectations, and it's because of the offensive line, I think it's fair to be critical about who they added and who they put their faith and trust in from the transfer portal.
Robbie Davis is Zaxby's Hall of Famer.
Robbie Davis, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm willing to bet you're probably doing fantastic as well.
I'm doing great. Yes, I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to a fun weekend, and it's always a pleasure to hear from you, Robbie. What's going on?
I like I said earlier on in the week, right? We have got. If I was the defensive coordinator, I would do everything within my power to make sure that the only way Georgia beats us is with Beck. I mean, and like you also said just now, right? We have nothing to lose. None of the pressure is on South Carolina. Would it suck? Is it going to suck if we lose this game? Yeah. But there's no pressure on us. All the pressure is on Georgia, Carson Beck, and Kirby Smart. There is no pressure on South Carolina. That's what I would do. I would sell out to stop the run and tell my corners and safeties we're going to depend on y'all to cover these guys, because I would rather get beat, have them try to beat me passing than beat me running. Because if they, like I said, also if they're able to run the football, we are screwed. If they start averaging 4 to 5 yards a carry, we are screwed. It's going to be a long day.
Yeah, you got to slow down the run game for sure, Robbie. I am curious what Georgia does, what their game plan is offensively. I am very curious, because with Georgia, you're always gearing up to stop the running game. But with Georgia, I mean, they feature some fantastic wide receivers. I mean, they are loaded at the wide receiver room of big time dudes. So it would not surprise me if they actually came out throwing the football. So I'll just be curious to see. But to your point, I do agree. Like, if you cannot stop the running game or at least slow it down, you don't have a chance. So.
Right. And we're going to have to, and also if I was Beamer, if it's a 4th and 1 and we're like almost to the 50, just for sake of arguing, okay, just say we make it to about almost the 50 and it's 4th and 1, I say screw it. Go for it. You you got nothing to lose. No one's giving you a chance in this game anyway. Go for it. Who gives a damn?
Mm-hmm.
You're either going to make it or you're not going to make it. You might as well give it everything you got in this game.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, you got nothing to hold back, my guy. Got nothing to hold back. So
just just go out there and just play your tails off, and whatever happens. But my prediction is, like I said, it's not pretty. So I've got my prediction ready to go.
And Robbie, before you get into that, Marion R26 just commented and said, y'all are going to be shocked when you hear Robbie's prediction. That's what he just said. So I'm going to let you proceed. That's a really interesting way to begin this.
Well, my prediction changed since a few hours ago. My original prediction was going to be 42-10. Okay, that was going to be my original prediction, but it has changed over the last several hours. I think it's going to be 42-17.
42-17 Dogs, which means South Carolina would indeed cover the spread. They would cover the plus 28, which, good teams win, great teams cover, I suppose. But, okay, 42-17.
So and I think Carson Beck is the kind of guy that, like, we don't really know what kind of quarterback he really is, right? Mm-hmm. Because they've played 2 back-to-back cupcake games against teams that they paid them to come play, and they've started off slow. If they start off slow this time, and we are opportunistic in turning the ball over, I think, and capitalizing off of it, I think we could make this game a lot closer than I have it. But I'm sticking to my guns and sticking to my prediction.
Well, Robbie, I respect it. I respect your realism, my friend. I do respect your realism. So,
and if I would have for this game, especially for this game, I would start Mario Anderson for this game at running back if I was Beamer.
I think a lot of folks agree with you. I really do. I think that a lot of people are on the Mario Anderson train, that he is the best option for South Carolina at the running back spot. And, again, we'll see, my friend. We'll see. But I do think his physicality, what that brings for you, I think it would be wise of South Carolina to give him an opportunity, at least give him more carries, at least give him more carries.
Right.
So.
Right. And and like you said, he has experience in things like this, in being a physically imposing running back, and that's the kind of running back we need for Saturday. And I love Joyner, but he's not at this moment able to find the running lanes on running plays. But we need someone that we know can handle running the ball 30 to 40 times if necessary. Mario Anderson is that
guy. Indeed, man. It's I mean, listen, it'd be one hell of an upset if South Carolina was able to pull it off. I
will go absolutely berserk if we. I don't think the house would be standing if we somehow go into Athens on Saturday afternoon at 3:30 and beat Georgia. I don't think our house would be standing anymore. I would be running around, jumping all over the place, probably breaking something. I don't know. I mean, it would be awesome. But like I said, I'm sticking to my guns, and that's my prediction. So we'll just have to wait till 3:30 till toe meets leather and just go from there.
Well, Robbie, win or lose, make sure your house is still standing, and we'll see what happens when the dust settles and talk about it on Monday.
Oh, for sure. All right, man. I'm gonna get off of here. Go Cox and go Florida Atlantic, baby. Go Florida Atlantic. Shock the world. Beat Clemson. Shock the world. Go into Death Valley and beat Clemson. That'd be awesome. I would love to see that. Might not happen, but I would love to see it.
As we all would, my friend. As we all would. Robbie, you're the man. I appreciate it. Great stuff as always.
Thanks, buddy. All right, buddy. Have a good one.
Yeah, man. Take care. Robbie Davis is locked in 42-17. He's got the Georgia Bulldogs getting the W over South Carolina. Let's see. Coleman Hall. What's going on, Coleman? He says 38-17, 28-7 at half or worse. So 38-17 is your final score prediction. Information station, Anderson needs about 14 carries. Brad Perkle, Robbie's calls make me so sleepy. He always sounds tired. I think he's just calm. That's it. Let's see. Bryce Hamrick, we need Rattler to be a real leader, especially if we're going to take chances. To quote the great Gene Hackman, winners want the ball when the game is on the line. I don't worry about Spencer Rattler in this football game. I really don't. Information station has South Carolina beating Georgia 34-24. 34-24. Gamecocks. Tommy Wallace, if we upset Georgia and Rattler plays well, how far up the Heisman meter and talk would he jump? I think fairly high. I think Spencer Rattler, the narrative around him would change drastically. Drastically. Maybe an R26 that I hear where Georgia was like 80-something in defensive pressure. Yes, Marc Ryan made that point. I didn't know that. They have not been great on the line of scrimmage through 2 games. So whatever that means going into this one. Coach Ford, can't stop the run, can't rush the passer, can't run block, can't protect the quarterback. How do you propose we win or stay close short of Georgia beating themselves? Coach Ford, you make a lot of great points, my friend. You make a lot of great points. I can't say you're off basis with any of that. I mean, really, truly, I can't sit here, Coach Ford, and say that you're wrong about any of it. It's a tall task for South Carolina. There's no question. Bryce says, O-line needs to play better, make good decisions. Chip blocks aren't going to work. Everything will need to be deliberate in the trenches, in my opinion. Tommy Wallace, which do we compete better with? Georgia's offense or Georgia's defense? Great question. I tend to think there's a better shot in the defense. I think the defense against the offense. See, JC would disagree. He thinks the offense against their defense doesn't have much hope for the defense. I think the defense can get after Carson Beck and make some things happen. Offensively, I worry about the offensive line. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. I don't think you're a pessimist. I think that's a real concern to have about the offensive line, the way it's looked through the first 2 weeks. Brad Perkle, right now I say no chance in hell when I wake up Saturday morning all the way up until kickoff. I'll feel like we're going to win. Heart always takes over. Travie, the most Gamecock thing would be for us to beat Georgia, then follow up with an L at home to Mississippi State. What a turn of events it would be. Andrew says, for me, it's hard to even choose either way. It always feels hit or miss, no matter what is shown on the field. For example, how the switch from Florida to Tennessee happened. Yeah, it's hard to really tell with South Carolina. It's hard to tell, putting it lightly. William Yeck says, only way we score 17 is if we get a defensive touchdown or special teams. Arthur Bear says, Chris, what would be the point spread in this game if one of our 11-win teams were headed to Athens this Saturday? I was wondering about this hypothetical. A lot closer. Arthur Bear, I'd probably say it'd be like a 7.5, 8. It'd be closer for sure. A lot closer. Coleman Hall says, King Dabble run too many wasted plays, screen swings, and little poot run plays up the middle. Won't be successful. He says long developing pass plays will damn us. West Coast and or air raid type style is how we'll have to win. Coach Ford says Rattler must run, must decide, commit to run quickly. Coleman Hall says just move the pocket and roll out at the pass plays, need more than 3 seconds. He'll have to do that. He'll do that by choice or by force, but it will happen, Coleman. Andrew, even if we lose to Georgia, but Rattler continues to perform well through every game, does he have any standing for any awards? Probably not the Heisman, but Andrew, I'd say all conference. I think he could actually absolutely play himself into being an all SEC quarterback. I mean, I think that's very fair for sure. Bo Daddy says Carolina will cover. Cody says, Georgia's 86 in the country and pressuring the quarterback. Only 1 sack this year. I didn't say it. Josh Pate said it. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll see. Madison Duncan says, turnover game. Gamecocks win. Ryan Cawthon says, I agree 100%. UGA is not what they were last year. The information station. This is not the same Georgia team as last year. Jacob E., UGA hasn't looked great so far, but they also haven't had a game plan at all. Players probably not juiced at all. This week, it'll be totally different for them. I tend to agree with you, Jacob. I think Georgia is going to play. It's going to be a much different Georgia team than what we've seen. Yeah. So, Let's see. Again, guys, keeping the convo rolling. 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Jacob says 17-10 at half, 38-24 final. I think we start slow and stay a step behind Georgia. We'll see. Austin Hicks, I want to hear why you think we can't win with airing the ball out down the field when airing it out deep is the only plays we've had success on. Well, Austin, I think South Carolina can find success in some plays downfield, but, you can't do that every play, Austin. You cannot do that every single play because Georgia's got enough good players to make the adjustment. They've got good enough coaches to make the adjustment and pin their ears back and make life a living hell for Spencer Rattler. That's why. I understand how Georgia has been beaten. I totally get that. But, do you trust South Carolina's offensive line to protect? So, I agree with you, and I agree with people that, passing the football, going on the field, being 70-30 pass to run. I think that's how you have to operate. That gives you the best chance to succeed. But there has to be some semblance of balance. And those are low percentage throws, as Coleman Hall points out. They're low percentage throws downfield. I know Spencer Rattler has been on one to start the season, but you keep going back to the well over and over again, Georgia's going to make you pay. Guys, let's jump into one final break. On the other side, we'll close out the show in style. I want to continue to hear from you, more of your questions, comments, calls, and more here on this Thursday. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge, where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars. And there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars. Or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose, while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Watch your doggy hoe.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, September the 14th. Final 9 minutes or so of the show. Taking your questions, comments, calls. 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. And, guys, I do want to hear from you as we continue to count down these seconds until the Gamecocks and Dogs do battle between the hedges, the SEC opener in Athens, Georgia, and the last time we see South Carolina take on Georgia for the foreseeable future. Of course, no South Carolina-Georgia game in 2024, and we're not exactly sure when these games will resume. So, anyways, guys, would love to hear from you. Steven says, I think this is going to be a personal game for Mike Bobo. Hopefully he beats himself like we played Auburn. Coach Ford, you had to throw open a run game or run open a pass game. It is called identity. We still do not have one. Arthur Mayer, my predictions 25-24 Gamecocks. Limbo dials up a 2-point conversion to win the game to avoid overtime. Love that. Coach Ford, we must find intermediate passing game. Knox has 2 targets and 2 catches. Coleman Hall, you run the clock and control the ball by moving the ball 3 to 10 yards at a time and keeping drives going. William Yex, don't think we can run the ball good enough to hold the ball and kill the clock. William Yex, I don't know why anyone would think we could run the ball well enough or run the ball at all against Georgia. South Carolina ran the ball for 2.8 yards per carry against Furman. And they ran it for -2 yards with sacks included against UNC. So, like, on what planet is South Carolina all of a sudden going to find a running game against Georgia? I'm not, guys, and when I say stuff like that, like, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but it would go against everything we know about this team. It would go against everything we've seen to this point. So I just, if it happens, it happens. But nothing that has happened to this point would tell us that it's going to happen. Anyways, guys, would love to continue to hear from you guys. Be sure, again, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications of when we drop new video content. We go live as well. Be sure you also hit that subscribe button on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out there. Podcast drops every single day, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, guys, I want to remind you of the A1 Air Quality Consultants post-game call-in show, which will take place after the game against the Georgia Bulldogs. Looking forward to it, guys. Taking all your questions, comments, of course, mainly your calls. I want to hear from you after the game. We've had 2 very successful post-game call-in shows, and I would imagine this one will be right up there as well. Let's see. GA, I'm ready for some weird stuff to happen. Me too, man. Me too. Coleman Hall, throwing the ball in high percentage, positive yard plays will be how we win. Coach Ford, can't run against Georgia. Mississippi State has a good D. Missouri does as well. I mean, listen, Coach Ford, to your point, if you're sitting here trying to, find solace in the fact that, or trying to make me say that it's not as bad as it seems on the offensive line, like I think this is going to be something South Carolina has to combat all year. And I'm not saying they won't be able to overcome it, but I don't see, like I think South Carolina is well on their way to finishing outside of the top 100 and rushing offense and rushing defense yet again. I don't see any reason why that won't be the case. And I think when that does happen, somebody needs to be held accountable. Bottom line, it needs to be fixed. It has to be corrected. It cannot continue. It cannot continue. Bottom line, Ryan, in your opinion, what has kept Beamer from landing his big running back option? Well, I mean, listen, Dontavius Braswell may be that guy. We don't know what's going on with Matthew Fuller. Who knows when he's committing? We have no idea. So, tough to say, Ryan. Tough to say because they've been able to recruit. I mean, maybe Dontavius Braswell with time is that guy. So, Tommy Wallace, new clock rule should be to our advantage. It should limit Georgia's offensive touches. Well, both teams' offensive touches, Tommy, are limited. So, Coach Ford, Knox's targets tell you that Bell did the smart thing. Bryce Hamrick says, why don't we just find more quarterbacks to put on the field at the same time? Oh, my goodness. William Yex, I don't think our receivers are good enough, are blocked good enough on the outside to run wide receiver screens in space. I mean, that is an issue, right? I mean, you couldn't really do it against UNC. So, I mean, guys, listen, people get exhausted with the commentary this week talking about the South Carolina-Georgia game. I mean, there's not an easy answer to how South Carolina is going to defeat Georgia. There's not an easy answer to how South Carolina is going to hang in the ball game with Georgia, right? Because as we dropped yesterday, the position unit comparison, Georgia's got the advantage everywhere. Outside of quarterback, Georgia has the advantage. Like, they are more talented and better than you at every spot. Flat out, point blank, period, end of discussion. That being said, we all hope and pray and keep our fingers crossed that it could happen, that it will happen, I should say. Spur your enthusiasm. We are going to win. Kemper, maybe Bobo will be awful this weekend like he was in the past. Kemper, maybe he will. I hope so. We can only hope, right? We can only hope he calls the type of game that he called while he was at South Carolina, which was not great. So, let's see. The information station. I want to simplify this. You prep for a team, you find their weaknesses, and you use your strengths. This is not a game where you focus on the run. You do rollouts. You run to keep about 22 run air raid mid pass. I mean, the information station, if it was that simple, Carolina would go undefeated. I mean, to your point. The problem is the information station that the other side is doing the exact same thing to you. So that's the only problem with your theory there. So, Greg Bedinger, not sure about the Knox-Bell comparison by Coach Ford. Final one here. This is a good one to go out on. Spur your enthusiasm. Bobo is ass. Muschamp is ass. Cox by 90. Love it. Guys, we've hit 3 o'clock. Appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications when we go live, when we drop new video content as well. Also, subscribe to the podcast and rate the podcast as well. 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Drops every single day, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And in the meantime, stay tuned to all the content on social media, content bleeding out of the eyeballs, as you all know. Guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.